Have you ever noticed how your life can feel like holding a handful of sand under a running faucet? The more fiercely you try to keep every grain in place, every opinion of you, every outcome, every plan, the faster it washes away. We call it effort, responsibility, even love. But beneath the frantic grasping, there is a quieter truth that Buddhist wisdom has whispered for centuries. Peace doesn't come from controlling the river. It comes from learning how to float. What if the most courageous act you could make today wasn't to try harder, but to loosen your grip? Not apathy, aliveness. Not indifference, inner freedom. What if the door you've been pushing with your whole body was actually a door that pulls modern life rewards performance more than presence? We polish our image, stage our worth, and wait for the world to stamp approved on our hearts. Yet every compliment fades, every metric resets, every bar we clear moves just a little higher. We keep running, convinced that the next finish line will finally let us rest. Buddhist teaching calls this cycle dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness that arises when we chase permanence in a world made of change. The mind says, if I just get this right, I'll be safe. The Dharma replies, everything arises and passes. Safety is not in outcomes, but in awareness. Consider a lantern in the wind. If you cup it too tightly, you smother the flame. If you leave it exposed, the gusts will blow it out. The way is a middle path, a steady, spacious holding. That's what stop caring really means in the context of wisdom. Stop exhausting yourself on what doesn't belong to you. Other people's stories, yesterday's echoes, tomorrow's shadows. Turn your care inward toward what is truly yours, the clarity of your attention, the kindness of your intentions, the honesty of your actions right now. There's a quiet deception that anxiety sells, that worry is a form of preparation. It masquerades as helpful, like pacing the floor before a journey, as though steps taken in place could carry you across a continent. But worry is a rehearsal for a play that may never premiere. It burns fuel without moving the vehicle. The Buddha's insight is disarmingly simple. Suffering blooms when we argue with reality. It withers when we meet reality as it is. When the mind spins, ask the only question that matters. What exists in this exact breath that I can touch with wisdom? Often the answer is small. Drink a glass of water, make a single call. Place one truthful sentence into the world. Small is not lesser. Small is honest. Small is the doorway through which the whole of your life walks. Let me tell you a new story. In a village at the edge of rice fields, there lived a potter whose cups were renowned for their symmetry. He kept a bucket of water by his wheel, and with each slight wobble, he dashed the clay back into the pail to begin again. Years passed. His hands became skillful, his reputation glittered, but his heart hollowed. One evening, an old nun passed through the village and watched him work. She noticed how often he struck down a nearly finished cup for a flaw no one else would see. "Master," she said gently, "these cups hold tea, not perfection." He frowned, but the wobble. She dipped a finger in the water and traced a ring on the table. "When the tea is hot, do you taste the circle or the warmth?" That night he fired the kiln with the cups he would have destroyed. In the morning, villagers drank, and their laughter rose like steam. The cups were not perfect. They were vessels. So are we. Your life is meant to hold experience, not showcase flawlessness. When we clutch at life, we tighten around a self we imagine is fixed, separate, and in danger. Anatta, non-self, reminds us that what you call you is a living collage. Sensations, feelings, perceptions, intentions, and consciousness, all moving, all interdependent. Think of a melody, remove a single note, and the song changes. Hold any one note forever, and the music dies. Your identity is not a wall to defend, but a song to keep listening to note by note, breath by breath. The more rigidly you define yourself, I must be seen this way, I must achieve that, the more brittle you become. The more you soften into the music of the moment, the freer you are to dance. You may ask, if I let go, won't everything fall apart? In truth, what collapses under letting go wasn't stable to begin with the need to be approved. The fantasy of total control, the compulsion to predict every turn. Letting go doesn't erase responsibility, it purifies it. Action no longer drips with desperation. It is guided by clarity. You still care, but with wise care. You still act, but without the poison of attachment to outcome. This is the difference between control and stewardship. Control says, I guarantee results. Stewardship says, I will meet this moment with integrity. The first breeds panic. The second grows peace. Try a small practice right now. Rest your attention on the feeling of your feet, the honest weight of your body, the coolness or warmth in the air. Without decoration, without narrative, just this. The mind will rush in with commentary. Bow to it and return again and again to sensation. This is not an escape from life, but a return to life. The present is not a consolation prize. It is the only field where anything real can happen. The past is a museum, the future a rumor. Here, in this simple noticing, worry loses a little oxygen. Here, the nervous system remembers it isn't a siren that must wail without rest. Another image, a gardener pruning a vine. If she refuses to cut the plant, strangles itself, chasing more light than it can hold. If she cuts too harshly, the plant withers. Wise pruning is an act of compassion. In the same way, prune your attention. Not every branch of possibility deserves your sap. Unfollow the thoughts that humiliate your spirit. Unsubscribe from the expectations that cost you tenderness. Choose fewer, deeper yeses. Each conscious no is a gift to your nervous system, a clearing in the thicket where light can reach the ground. You may remember times you tried to bully your mind into calm, to scold it into silence. But serenity can't be forced. It is invited. Metta loving kindness begins as a whisper. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I live with ease. Speak it not as a spell to change the weather, but as a hand on your own shoulder when the rain comes. Then widen the circle. May you be safe. May you be peaceful, even for those whose opinions of you feel sharp. This isn't saintly performance. It's nervous system judo. Hatred keeps you leashed to what hurts. Kindness releases the knot that pain tightens. There is a moment in every day that could be your turning point. Often, it looks ordinary. The pause before you answer the message, the breath before you open the door, the heartbeat before you decide whether to believe a scary thought. In that sliver, you have sovereignty. You can step back into the old choreography, clench, control, convince, or you can shift 1 degree toward ease. 1 degree repeated is a new latitude. This is how life falls into place, not by the world rearranging itself to your liking, but by your inner compass aligning with what is true and workable right now. If you take only one seed from today, let it be this: the pressure you feel is not a mandate from reality, but a habit of the mind. Pressure is a story that says, if I don't hold everything together, it will all collapse. Wisdom answers, set down what isn't yours. You'll find what remains was never in danger. Let go of the sand under the faucet. Step back from the wheel you've been spinning to exhaustion. Hold your life like the gardener holds the vine, with care, with clarity, with space to breathe. And as this first chapter closes, let your shoulders drop a fraction, unclench the jaw a shade. Feel the room, the ground, the breath. The world outside may not change in the next minute, but your way of meeting it can. Consider this your gentle threshold, from grasping to grace, from proving to presence. We'll walk it together, one honest breath at a time. Let's walk straight into the first knot, the mind's well-dressed lie that worry equals responsibility. It feels industrious, the mental pacing, the scenario, rehearsals, the meticulous postmortems. You can almost hear an inner clipboard flipping pages, but examine closely, and you'll see motion without migration, a kind of psychic treadmilling. In the Buddha's language, this is unskillful effort energy burned without wisdom's compass. Right effort doesn't whip the mind, it steers it. Worry, by contrast, is effort divorced from clarity. It tricks you into believing you're preventing harm while quietly draining the strength you need to meet life as it is. Picture a lighthouse keeper before a storm. She polishes the lens, checks the oil, tests the bell. These are necessary actions, but imagine she then spends hours counting waves she cannot stop and naming winds she cannot tame. The lamp sits unlit while the mind names gust after gust. That is worry cataloging what you cannot control while neglecting the one flame that matters. Your lamp is present moment action. Light it and ships navigate. Leave it dark while forecasting the sea. And what good are your predictions? Why does worry feel productive? Because it offers three counterfeit comforts: the illusion of control, the illusion of certainty, and the illusion of progress. First, control. If I keep thinking, I won't be surprised. Second, certainty. If I prepare for every outcome, I'll choose correctly. Third, progress. If I stay mentally busy, I must be moving forward. The Dharma answers each illusion plainly. Control conditions are countless and interwoven. You influence, you do not dominate. Certainty, all compounded things are impermanent. Plans are provisional bridges. Progress, only actions in alignment with the present can bear fruit. Rumination is a field with no seeds, a new story for your pocket. In a mountain town lived a clockmaker whose reputation drew travelers from far valleys. He adjusted springs with surgical care and could hear a mistuned tick beneath market noise. But somewhere along the years, he began to distrust completion. He would set a clock, then reopen the case to check again. Set it, reopen. Set it, reopen. Customers waited. Days grew long. One winter evening, an itinerant monk brought him an old travel clock. The face cracked. The case dented the hands stuck at dusk. The clockmaker, ashamed of its disrepair, kept reaching for the latch after each adjustment. The monk placed a hand gently over the lid. "Master," he said, "you cannot make a clock keep tomorrow's time." The clockmaker looked up, startled. "Close it when it's ready to keep now." He closed the lid. The clock ticked imperfectly, honestly alive. The line between care and compulsion is thin. Worry crosses it in silence and calls itself diligence. Buddhist psychology. Abhidhamma notes how a single unexamined thought proliferates papanka, branching into a thicket of commentary. What if? And then, unless. But they. Soon you're lost in the underbrush. The exit is not to machete your way through every branch. It is to pause before the first split. Worry begins as a doorbell. You do not have to invite it to dinner. The practice is to meet the ring with a bow. Ask, is there a skillful action here? If yes, take it. If no, return to breath posture task. This is not coldness, it's compassion for your finite attention. Try the one breath audit. The moment worry arises, don't argue. Feel it. 1 inhale, 1 exhale. Then ask 3 questions in order. What is real here? Sensations, facts, the single next step. 2. What is story? Assumptions, mind movies, rehearsals. 3. What is kind and action that reduces harm? Now drink water, clarify a promise, rest your eyes. If a concrete action emerges, do it within 60 seconds. Send the email you fear, set a 5-minute timer to begin the task you avoid. Write 3 bullet points for the conversation you dread. If no action is possible, return yourself to the body press. Your feet into the floor, feel the spine lengthen, relax the tongue. Often your nervous system is not demanding solutions. It is requesting presence. But isn't thinking ahead, wise yes, when it's deliberate, time-boxed, and held lightly? Call it compassionate planning. Set a 10-minute container to list realistic scenarios and 1 response for each. Then close the notebook and re-enter the moment. Planning without a container is a leaking boat it takes on the entire ocean of what-ifs. Planning with a container is a vessel it carries you across a specific stretch of water and then docks. Another image. An archer on a still morning lifts the bow, draws steadies. There is a window in which focus is crisp and the body supports the shot. Hold too long chasing perfect certainty and the arms tremble. The sight picture wobbles, not because the world has grown unstable, but because effort has outlived wisdom. Release belongs to reality. Perfection belongs to fantasy. In practice, release looks like sending the message at good enough, publishing the page when it says the truth you have today, leaving the meeting with 1 clear agreement rather than 5 hypothetical charts. Counterintuitively, this breeds reliability. People trust those who move when it's time to move, not when worry says, wait until every cloud clears. Let's talk about the nervous system. Worry recruits the body to do a mind's job. Jaw tightens, breath shallows, eyes scan, yet there is nothing to lift or outrun. The Buddha taught breath as a refuge because it returns the animal of you from an imaginary hunt. A skillful sequence. 1 ground name 5 things you can physically feel. 2 slow lengthen exhalations by 2 counts. 3 orient turn your head and quietly note 3 neutral objects in the room. 4 choose pick 1 next action or consciously choose no action and place the mind on the breath for 10 cycles. This sequence is not therapy. It is training. You are training yourself to prefer reality to rumor. Worry also attaches itself to identity. A responsible person anticipates everything. Examine the cost. True responsibility is responsibility, the capacity to respond with wisdom. Rumination shrinks that capacity. A simple pledge can help. I will not sacrifice clarity for control. Write it where your eyes fall. If you find yourself looping, say the pledge, then do the smallest honest task in reach. Wash a cup with complete attention. Organize 1 document, step outside, and feel the weather for 30 seconds. These micro acts reset your allegiance to presence. You might be afraid that without worry, you'll become careless. Notice how the opposite is true. When the noise quiets, what remains is care. Wise care is precise. It asks, what eases suffering here? Sometimes the answer is action. Sometimes it's a boundary. Sometimes it's rest. Worry shouts all 3 at once and then scolds you for indecision. Wisdom speaks softly and repeats itself. You will know it by its clarity and its kindness. It creates energy instead of stealing it. There's a Zen saying, talk a lot, carry water little. Worry is that talk. Carrying water is the next right thing. If your mind insists on rehearsal, rehearse your first step. If you must ruminate, ruminate on your values, honesty, patience, compassion. Then step. Action feeds trust. Trust reduces worry. Reduced worry frees energy. Freed energy fuels action. This is a virtuous loop you can choose breath by breath. Finally, pick a small covenant with yourself for the next 24 hours. No third thought. The first thought arises habit. The second notices awareness. The third chooses practice. Let worry have the first. Let awareness bow at the second. Do not grant the third to rumination. Give it to reality. Send the line. Make the call. Or if nothing can be done, return to the sanctuary of the body and let the storm spend itself while your lamp stays lit. As we close this chapter, place a hand over your heart. Feel the reliable thud, a clock that keeps only the present. You do not need a guarantee to meet the next moment. You need a steadied gaze and a lamp that burns. Worry will knock again. Let it. You have learned where the latch is. You know how to close the case and let life tick. There comes a moment when fear arrives, not as a shout, but as a whisper, a trembling thought that curls at the edge of your awareness. What if I fail? What if I'm not enough? And before you notice it, multiplies weaving webs of uncertainty that close in like a slow-moving fog. You begin to live not in the world itself, but in your mind's forecast of storms. This is the birth of the fear loop, the invisible circle where thought feeds emotion, emotion fuels thought, and the soul forgets how to rest. But Buddhist wisdom doesn't call fear the enemy. It calls it a teacher. Fear is not here to paralyze you. It's here to illuminate where you cling. Like a torchlight on the walls of a dark cave, it shows you what you've hidden: your attachments, your expectations, your imagined control. The first step toward freedom is not to destroy fear, but to bow to it and see it clearly. Because when you look directly at fear with awareness, it cannot survive the light. There was once a young painter who wanted to capture peace on canvas. He tried painting sunsets, mountains, gardens, all beautiful, yet none felt alive. One evening, a fierce storm rolled over his village. Trees bent, rivers overflowed, thunder roared. But inside a small temple, a candle burned steady. The painter suddenly understood. Peace was not the absence of the storm, but the presence of the flame that endures it. He painted that scene, and it changed his life. Fear is the storm. Awareness is the candle. Every time you run from fear, you feed the storm. Every time you stay, breathe, and observe, you strengthen the flame. When fear visits, the instinct is to fight, flee, or freeze. But what if you simply allowed it to enter, to sit beside you, without conversation, without judgment? In that radical acceptance lies a quiet alchemy. Fear loses its authority when you stop negotiating with it. The Buddha called this sati mindfulness, the art of remembering to be present. You are not the fear. You are the one who notices it. Try this the next time fear tightens your chest. Pause. Place a hand there. Feel the rise and fall beneath your palm. Name what is true. This is fear. Do not add because of or what if. Those are stories. Just, this is fear. Breathe into it. Notice how naming begins to soften its edges. It becomes less of a monster and more of a message. It says, here is a place where love is missing. Here is where you are still protecting an illusion. In Buddhist thought, the mind is like a monkey leaping from branch to branch, restless, easily startled. But beneath that mind lies awareness, vast and unshaken like the sky. Thoughts, emotions, fears, they are only clouds passing through. They change shape, they come and go, but the sky remains. When you identify with the cloud, you suffer. When you remember, you are the sky, peace returns. There is another story told in monasteries. A monk meditating deep in a cave hears footsteps approaching. Fear grips him. Perhaps it's a wild animal. His heart races, breath shortens. He wants to run, but there's nowhere to go. Instead, he keeps his eyes closed and says quietly, "Fear, I see you. You may stay, but you may not lead." The footsteps grow louder, then fade away. When he opens his eyes, the cave is empty. The enemy he fought was never outside, it was his mind's echo. That night he slept deeper than he had in years. You too can make fear your guest instead of your master. Watch how it knocks, demanding attention. Open the door with mindfulness, not with panic. Say, "You may sit here quietly," and then go about your life. The moment you stop resisting fear, it begins to dissolve because it feeds only on the energy of your struggle. The river calms when you stop thrashing. Ask yourself gently, how many dreams have I delayed because I was waiting to feel unafraid? Fear says, wait until you're ready. Wisdom says, begin and readiness will grow along the way. You cannot think your way into courage. You can only act your way into peace. Fear shrinks in the presence of motion, just as darkness recedes in the presence of light. Imagine your life as a vast field of tall grass. Fear is the wind moving through it. You can't stop the wind, but you can learn to bend with it, to sway without breaking. Flexibility. Not avoidance is strength. The bamboo survives the storm because it yields. The oak that resists cracks. So it is with the heart. To bend without losing center, that is true power. One mindful question can free you from fear's loop. Is this danger real, or is it remembered? Most fear lives in imagination. Recycled pain, predicted rejection, projected failure. The body doesn't know the difference. It tenses as if the lion were here. But awareness knows, and awareness gently whispers, this is a memory, not a threat. Each time you remember this, the body begins to unlearn its false alarms. Fear is also tied to self, the I that believes it must defend its image, its success, its future. Yet Buddhism teaches that this I is a process, not a possession. The moment you stop defining yourself by fixed roles, achiever, savior, victim, controller, fear loses much of its ground. The fluid self has nothing to protect, only experiences to meet. Here's a small practice: sit in silence and picture fear as a small creature, trembling, lost, not evil. Instead of pushing it away, hold it with compassion. Whisper inwardly, you're safe. You can rest. In that tenderness, fear begins to dissolve because what it sought was never security, only understanding. Sometimes the lesson of fear is not be brave, but be kind. Be kind to the part of you that trembles. The part that still believes safety depends on control. Each breath you take with kindness is a thread weaving strength through your soul. That's why the Buddha said, hatred is never ended by hatred, but by love. In the same way, fear is never ended by courage alone, but by compassion. You are not meant to be fearless. You are meant to be free. To be free is to know that fear may visit, but it cannot stay. To know that even as your heart pounds, there is a deeper stillness beneath it. You are the ocean, not the wave. Before this part closes, sit for a moment. Feel your breath in, out. Imagine fear as mist rising from a valley at dawn. You don't chase it. You simply watch as the sun of awareness touches it and it fades on its own. There is no fight, no victory, only peace. So if fear has been whispering your name lately, answer softly, I see you. Then take one small, steady step toward what matters most. Let that step be your declaration. I am the sky, not the storm. When you stop feeding fear, it starves. When you meet it with presence, it bows. And in that bow, you remember who you are, the watcher, the flame, the sky that no storm can harm. Have you ever realized how often your greatest suffering isn't born from what's happening, but from what you think is happening? A single silence after a message, a pause in someone's tone, a glance that lingers too long, and the mind begins its theater. You write entire chapters in seconds. They're upset. I failed. Something's wrong. And before reality has even spoken, you're already bleeding from imagined wounds. The Buddha once said, "The mind creates the world." How often have you mistaken those mental shadows for truth? The truth is, most problems exist only as thoughts in disguise. The world outside rarely injures us as deeply as the world we invent within. What we call pain is often perception wrapped in memory, interpretation, and judgment. When you learn to separate what is happening from what you're telling yourself about it, the storm begins to part. There was once a young monk tasked with fetching water every morning from the river. One day, as he filled his pot, he noticed his reflection trembling in the current. "Why am I always so restless?" he thought. The next morning, he returned before sunrise, hoping the water would be still. But even then, the ripples appeared. He grew frustrated. An old monk watching nearby said softly, "You are trying to calm the river by shouting at it. Sit and wait." The young monk sat silent until the movement naturally settled. When he looked again, the reflection was clear, not because the river obeyed, but because he stopped disturbing it. The river is your mind. The reflection is your reality. Stop shouting at the river. Let the water settle. When a problem arises, the mind grabs it, stretches it, decorates it with what-ifs, and calls it truth. But reality in this present moment is often simple and neutral. A delayed reply is just that, a message not yet returned. A quiet friend is just quiet. The rest is story. The practice is to keep returning to what is verifiably now. Not the story of yesterday, not the forecast of tomorrow. Just the breath, the body, the sound around you. Buddhism calls this vipassana, clear seeing. It is the art of looking directly without the fog of interpretation. When you see things as they are not as you fear they might be, your suffering dissolves like mist in morning sun. Here's an exercise: the next time anxiety builds, pause and ask 3 questions. 1. What is actually happening? 2. What story am I telling about it? 3. Who would I be right now without that story? Most times the truth is gentler than your imagination. The mind is a skilled playwright. It loves drama because drama gives it identity. I am the victim, it says. I am the rescuer. I am the failure. But all these are costumes. When you remove them, there's only awareness, vast, quiet, unattached. This is why the Buddha compared the mind to a monkey leaping from branch to branch. The leap is the habit. Awareness is the tree itself, stable, rooted, alive. Imagine sitting in a cinema. The film begins, colors, sounds, emotions, all vivid. You lose yourself in it until suddenly you remember, oh, I'm watching a movie. The screen hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has. The fear dissolves, not because the scene is different, but because you've woken up. Life is much like that. The mind projects, edits, dramatizes, but awareness is the seat you sit in. Remember the seat, and you reclaim peace. There's a parable of 2 travelers crossing a forest. One is terrified, convinced of wild beasts behind every tree. The other walks the same path, but listens just birds, the rustle of leaves, the pulse of the wind. The path is identical, but the experience is worlds apart. Fear didn't come from the forest. It came from the traveler's mind. So it is. With life, the same event can be heaven or hell, depending on the story you tell. Ask yourself right now, what is wrong in this exact breath? Not in yesterday's memory or tomorrow's forecast, but here in this inhale. Most likely nothing. You are breathing. You are alive. The mind invents problems to maintain the illusion of control. But when you see that the storm is made of thought, you stop trying to fight the thunder. You simply wait and let it pass. Thoughts are not facts. They are visitors. Let them come. Offer them tea. Watch them leave. You are the host, not the guest. Sometimes your thoughts will insist, but this time it's serious. This feeling is real. And yes, the emotion is real, but the story attached to it may not be. In Buddhist practice, we learn to honor emotion without obedience to thought. Feeling is just feeling, said the Buddha, not command. The wave rises, but you are not required to drown. Here's another way to see it. You stand before a mirror covered in dust. Each thought is a smear, each worry a fingerprint. The more you panic and rub at it, the more the image blurs. But if you simply breathe, if you let the dust settle and clean it gently, clarity returns. Your reflection was never gone, only obscured. The mirror is awareness. The dust is thinking. Stop fighting the dust. See through it. Reality is simple. The mind complicates it. Peace isn't something you must create. It's what remains when thought quiets. Try this small ritual tonight before sleep. Sit with a journal and write 3 lines. 1. Today I confused a thought with reality when. 2. The truth was simpler. 3. Tomorrow I will look more gently. This practice loosens the knots of interpretation and returns you to direct experience. When you notice your mind spiraling, do not judge it. Smile. You've simply caught yourself mid-story. That awareness is victory already. The Buddha never demanded perfection, only presence. Enlightenment is not the destruction of thought. It's the recognition that you are not the thought. And if you ever doubt this, go outside. Watch the clouds drift across the sky. Some are dark, some radiant, yet none stay. You never fear that the clouds define the sky. Then why believe that thoughts define you? You are the space through which everything moves, the awareness untouched by story, unchanged by fear, unharmed by passing clouds. The more you remember this, the lighter the mind becomes. Problems shrink, not because the world changes, but because you stop mistaking imagination for reality. So the next time your mind begins its theater pause, step out of the story, look around the room, feel your breath, and whisper softly, "This moment is enough," because it is. When you stop reacting to the movie in your mind, you return to the quiet truth of being clear, whole, and free. Pause for a moment. In the rhythm of your own breath, notice how fast the world has become, how easily the mind mirrors its speed. We scroll, respond, consume, rush, repeat. The noise outside becomes the noise within, until stillness feels unfamiliar, almost unbearable. Yet within Buddhist wisdom lies a simple, timeless truth. The pause is not an interruption of life, it is where life actually happens. Your mind, like a glass of muddy water, can never reflect truth while being constantly stirred. If you keep spinning your thoughts, seeking clarity through motion, the sediment of confusion never settles. But let it rest even for a few breaths, and you'll see the bottom again. The mud was never the problem, it was the stirring. One day, a farmer came to a Zen master complaining, My life is chaos. My work, my home, my mind. Tell me how to fix it." The master poured him tea until it overflowed. The farmer leapt up. "Stop it spilling." The master smiled. "So is your mind. Until you stop pouring, nothing new can enter." The lesson was simple. Clarity requires emptiness. We confuse busyness with progress. We think motion means meaning. But activity without awareness is just noise wearing the mask of purpose. Stillness is not laziness, it is alignment. It's where the scattered fragments of your mind return to their center. Sit for a moment now. Breathe. Feel the air come and go. That's all. No mantra, no goal. Just observe. See how life continues without your interference. The body breathes, the heart beats, the world spins. Peace doesn't need your management. It only needs your permission. In Buddhist teaching, samatha means calm, abiding the practice of resting the mind like a bird settling on a branch. No force, no struggle. The bird doesn't fight the air. It trusts the wind's stillness enough to stop flapping. So too must you trust the moment enough to stop trying to control it. The truth is, your mind is not tired from work. It's tired from never stopping. Even sleep for most is not rest, but another battlefield of thought. But stillness is a homecoming. When you pause, you return to yourself, to the awareness untouched by the day's demands. There's a story of a monk who sat beside a river every morning for decades. One student finally asked, "Master, what do you see in that water every day?" The monk smiled. "At first, I saw the river. Then I saw myself. Now, I see only seeing. That is the power of stillness. When you sit long enough, the watcher and the watched dissolve, and only awareness remains. To pause doesn't mean to withdraw from life. It means to engage it more honestly. When you pause before speaking, your words soften. When you pause before reacting, wisdom enters. When you pause before judging, compassion blooms. The pause is the breath between impulse and understanding, and in that breath lives your freedom. You may think you don't have time to pause, but the truth is, you don't have time not to. A mind constantly in motion makes mistakes, overreacts, and exhausts itself. A paused mind acts once, but wisely. The Buddha taught, if you are too busy to sit quietly for 10 minutes a day, you should sit for an hour. Because busyness is often avoidance disguised as duty. Think of your mind as a room filled with echoes. The more you shout, the louder it becomes. Silence is not emptiness, it is spaciousness. It is the place where insight finally has room to arrive. When the surface calms, the depths begin to speak. Try this small practice. The next time your phone rings, don't answer immediately. Let it ring twice. Feel your breath before responding. Each pause is a reclamation of presence. Or when you feel anger rise before words leave your mouth, inhale slowly. Let the emotion complete its circle inside you, without leaking harm into the world. In that moment of stillness, you are choosing awareness over instinct, peace over habit. Stillness is not the absence of sound. It's the absence of identification with noise. You can be in a crowded street and still feel serene if you're not possessed by every passing stimulus. You can be surrounded by chaos, yet carry a silent temple within. Meditation is simply the art of discovering that temple again and again until its door is never truly closed. Ask yourself, when was the last time I truly stopped? Not slept, not scrolled. Stopped fully awake, fully still, doing nothing and being everything. The mind resists because stillness feels unproductive. But the flower doesn't rush its bloom. The moon doesn't hurry its rise. The universe moves in rhythm, not race. When you pause, you align with that cosmic tempo. You may fear that in stillness you'll meet your hidden pain, and you will. But that's grace, not punishment. The silence reveals what you've buried under distraction. In that revelation lies release. The noise was never protecting you. It was delaying your healing. Buddhist monks often say, "Do not seek peace. Let peace find you." You cannot chase what stands still. You can only stop long enough to be found. When you sit in silence, peace recognizes you instantly, like an old friend waiting for you to remember their face. And remember, stillness is a practice, not a performance. Some days your thoughts will chatter endlessly. That's fine. You don't fail at stillness. You simply notice movement again. The noticing is the stillness. When the water clears, wisdom reflects. When the mind calms, truth speaks. Every pause you take is a seed, and every seed of silence grows into a forest of understanding. So today, pause. Before you rush to fix, to explain, to prove, pause. Let the moment breathe through you. Let the noise of the world fall away until you hear what was always there beneath it, the quiet hum of being. Because in that silence, something extraordinary happens. Life begins to fall into place, not by your command, but by its own sacred rhythm. Peace is not something we stumble upon when the noise ends. It's something we build in the middle of the noise. Like a lotus rising from the mud, serenity does not bloom because the water is clean, but because the seed knows how to grow in stillness, regardless of what surrounds it. The Buddha taught that peace is not a gift from the world. It is a discipline of the heart. It's not luck. It's practice. We often say, "When things calm down, I'll rest." But life rarely calms down on its own. There will always be deadlines, duties, heartbreaks, and change. If you wait for silence to arrive before you build your peace, you may wait a lifetime. The truth is, the world outside may never quiet, but you can. Think of peace as a garden. You cannot plant it once and forget it. You must water it every day, not with perfection, but with presence. You clear the weeds of resentment. You loosen the soil of fear. You prune the branches of expectation. Little by little, something sacred begins to grow. One evening, a student asked his teacher, "Master, when will I find peace?" The master said, "When you stop looking for it as if it were missing." The student frowned. "But how do I do that?" The master smiled. "By tending to what's already here." Peace is not a destination. It's a daily ritual. Each breath, each act of kindness, each pause before reacting. These are the ways you tend to your inner garden. Some days weeds will grow faster than flowers. That's okay. Don't abandon the garden. Gently, patiently, begin again. Buddhism teaches that everything we seek already exists within us in potential. Peace, love, compassion. They are not things to find, but qualities to cultivate. Like muscles, they strengthen through repetition. Every time you forgive instead of resent, breathe instead of react, or listen instead of judge, you are exercising the muscle of peace. Ask yourself, what have I done today to feed my peace? Not my productivity, not my plans, but my peace. It could be as small as taking 3 conscious breaths before opening a message, or as simple as walking slowly to feel the ground beneath your feet. Small acts done consistently become sacred habits. Many people treat peace like a vacation, a rare luxury reserved for when the body collapses. But the Buddha's wisdom is practical. You don't have to escape the world to find stillness. You build stillness right where you are washing dishes, driving home, answering an email. When awareness is present, every moment is a temple. Let's reimagine peace not as a fragile state, but as a steady fire. The wind can blow, yet the flame remains. Why? Because its light is fed not by circumstances, but by intention. You can learn to tend that fire to keep it alive in conversation, in conflict, in chaos. One practice: start your mornings with 5 minutes of silence before touching your phone. Sit, breathe, and simply arrive in your body. In the evening, end the day the same way, 5 minutes of gratitude before bed. These 10 minutes are not a pause from life. They are your return to life. If you water these moments daily, the rest of your hours begin to bloom with the same fragrance. Peace, like breath, is renewable. The more you share it, the more it grows. A kind word spoken instead of anger, a deep breath taken instead of a harsh reply. Each small choice is a seed. Imagine if each day you planted just one seed of peace. By the end of the year, your garden would overflow. But you might say, "My mind doesn't stay quiet." That's okay. Peace isn't the absence of thoughts, it's the ability to witness them without being dragged along. The mind's nature is movement. Your task is not to stop the river, but to learn how to float. Even the Buddha himself described his mind as sometimes restless. Yet through awareness, he learned not to mistake ripples for waves. When restlessness visits, smile. It's a reminder to return home. When sadness comes, let it sit beside you. Offer it the cushion of compassion. Don't force yourself to be serene. Serenity arrives naturally when you stop demanding it. There's a story of a monk who spent years chasing enlightenment in solitude. When he finally returned to his village, he found himself frustrated by the noise and chaos. One day, a child laughed and spilled water on his robe. The monk's anger flared. In that moment, he realized his peace was conditional, built on silence, not understanding. True peace, he discovered, must hold laughter and chaos, not flee from them. You see, peace isn't fragile, it's fierce. It's not the kind of peace that hides from the storm, but the kind that dances in the rain. It's not passive, it's alive. When peace becomes a habit, it transforms reaction into response, urgency into awareness, and struggle into surrender. Ask yourself tonight, am I chasing peace or am I practicing it? Because peace is not a prize to be won at the end of the day. It's the way you walk through the day. Every morning, the world will offer you countless reasons to lose your calm opinions, deadlines, disappointments. But each of those moments is also an invitation to return to breathe, to water your garden again. And when you begin to live this way, you discover something beautiful. The world doesn't have to change for you to be at peace. You change, and the world follows. The chaos outside bows to the stillness inside. So let today be your practice. Breathe when you want to rush. Smile when you want to scold. Forgive when you want to prove. These are not small acts. They are sacred revolutions, because every time you choose presence over pressure, you are quietly teaching the universe what peace looks like. Do not seek peace, beloved friend. Be peace. And in that being, watch how everything begins to fall, not apart, but into place. There is a strange anxiety that lives quietly in the human heart, the hunger to know. We chase answers like moths chasing light. What will happen? Will I succeed? Will they stay? We think certainty equals safety, that if we could just solve the puzzle of tomorrow, we'd finally rest tonight. Yet the irony is this: the more we try to master the unknown, the more restless we become. The Buddha called this restlessness a form of grasping the mind's desperate attempt to control what was never meant to be held. Life, he taught, is not a problem to solve, but a river to flow with. When you release your need to know every turn, you begin to trust the current. You begin to taste freedom. A student once asked his Zen master, "Why does uncertainty make me so afraid?" The master replied, "Because you believe you are the boat, but you are the river." Uncertainty in truth is not chaos. It is space. It is the fertile ground where possibility grows. Without it, nothing new could ever bloom. The seed must surrender to darkness before it meets light. The caterpillar must dissolve completely before wings emerge. So too must we learn to dissolve our need for control before we can truly live. Think of your life like walking through a misty forest at dawn. You can't see far ahead, but the path reveals itself one step at a time. You don't need to see the destination to keep moving. You only need to trust that the ground will hold beneath your feet. That trust, that willingness to walk without sight, is the heart of wisdom. In Buddhist thought, this trust is called saddha, not blind belief, but confidence born from experience. It's the quiet knowing that even if you don't know the way life does, every breath you take, every leaf that falls, every dawn that arrives unbidden, all of it proves the same truth. Existence moves with intelligence. You are not separate from that intelligence. You are an expression of it. We suffer because we demand clarity before peace. I'll relax when I know what's next. I'll rest when everything is certain. But peace doesn't wait for answers. It grows in the soil of not knowing. True peace is the ability to sit inside the question and still feel safe. Ask yourself, when did I begin to believe I needed to understand everything? There was a time in childhood when mystery felt sacred, not threatening. You could look at the stars without needing to name them. You could hear the wind without asking where it came from. That was innocence, but also wisdom. The mind may grow clever, but the heart that trusts remains the purest form of intelligence. Let go of your obsession with answers. Replace it with curiosity. Curiosity doesn't demand, it listens. It leans into uncertainty like a flower turns toward light, saying, "Show me." When you approach life with curiosity instead of fear, every moment becomes a teacher. A story tells of a wanderer who traveled across deserts seeking the meaning of life. After years of exhaustion, he collapsed beside a stream. An old hermit found him there and asked, "What have you discovered in your search?" The wanderer wept. "Nothing. I've searched everywhere and still don't know who I am." The hermit smiled and offered him water. "Then perhaps it's time to stop searching and start drinking." In that moment, the wanderer looked at his reflection in the stream and laughed. The search had always been inside him. We search for answers because we fear emptiness. But in Buddhist wisdom, shunyata, emptiness, is not void. It's vastness. It's the space where all things arise and dissolve. It's not the absence of meaning, but the infinite potential for meaning. To sit with not knowing is to rest in the womb of creation itself. The Zen saying goes, "Let go or be dragged." We cling to plans, people, and predictability because we believe they define who we are. But who were you before you made those plans? Who are you beneath all those expectations? That's the you. The Buddha invites you to meet the self untouched by circumstance, unbound by certainty. When you stop demanding that life explain itself, something miraculous happens. You start to hear its quiet language. The wind through the trees becomes instruction. The rhythm of your breath becomes scripture. The simple unfolding of each day becomes revelation. Practice this the next time you face uncertainty. Instead of asking, "What should I do?" try asking, "What is this moment asking of me?" The first question seeks control. The second invites cooperation. One clenches, the other opens. Wisdom always grows from openness. Uncertainty is not your enemy. It's the space where faith, creativity, and transformation live. Without it, there is no art, no discovery, no awakening. You were never meant to be the author of every outcome, only a conscious participant in the unfolding. When doubt rises, breathe and say quietly, I don't need to know. I need to trust. Then move gently, one step, one breath, one truth at a time. The mind craves a map. The heart thrives on mystery. The mind wants to master life. The heart wants to dance with it. And in that dance, unpredictable, alive, and wild, you meet the real teaching that surrender is not giving up. It's falling in step with the rhythm of the universe. So today, loosen your grip on the steering wheel of life. You are not lost. You are being carried. Let the river lead. Let the fog be your teacher. Let the mystery be home. Because the more you let go of needing to know, the more life reveals itself, quietly, gracefully, in ways certainty never could. And in that soft unknowing, you will find something deeper than knowledge peace. All your life you've been told that your worth depends on how the world sees you, how much you achieve, how many approve, how brightly you shine in other people's eyes. And somewhere along the way, without noticing, you started mistaking their reflection for your own. You became a mirror, not a being. Every compliment became oxygen. Every criticism a wound. You began to bend and shrink, hoping to fit into shapes that weren't yours. But the Buddha taught, no one can make you inferior unless you hand them the rope. When your sense of value depends on others' praise, your peace becomes their property. You stop living, you start performing. You were not born to be a mirror. You were born to be a flame. A mirror reflects light only when someone else stands before it. But a flame creates light on its own. There was once a sculptor who spent years carving a statue of the Buddha from marble. He shaped every fold of the robe, every curve of the lips, but something still felt wrong. It doesn't shine, he muttered in despair. A passing monk watched him and said, You're polishing the stone, not the stillness. Confused, the sculptor asked, What do you mean? The monk replied, Peace is not in the eyes of the viewer. It's in the heart of the one who creates. The sculptor stopped sanding and began to breathe, carving, not with his hands, but with presence. The next morning, the statue looked radiant, not because the marble changed, but because the sculptor did. So too with you. The glow the world seeks from you is not in what you show, but in what you are. Validation is a beautiful thing until it becomes an addiction. Every nod, every I'm proud of you, feels like sunlight, but soon you realize it fades as quickly as it comes. The warmth never lasts because it isn't born from within. That's why the Buddha warned that external praise is like borrowing a candle. The moment the wind shifts, the flame dies. Only the light you kindle yourself can withstand the storm. Ask yourself gently, who am I when no one is watching? Do I still feel worthy when the applause stops? Can I be proud of who I am, even if no one notices? If your answer trembles, you are not alone. Every human heart longs to be seen, but the deeper longing is to see itself. The path of wisdom begins when you turn your gaze inward, when you stop asking, do they love me, and start asking, am I living in truth? When you live from truth, you no longer need to be liked to feel alive. Because being liked is temporary. Being true is eternal. Buddhism teaches that attachment is the root of suffering, and one of the most seductive attachments is the need to be understood. We ache for others to get us to approve, to validate. But here's the quiet liberation: you don't need to explain your soul to those committed to misunderstanding it. Your peace is not a public performance, it is a private temple. Consider the lotus again. It blooms in the mud, untouched by the filth that surrounds it. The lotus does not wait for the swamp to approve its beauty. It simply rises. So too must you rise, not to impress, but to express. The lotus doesn't compete with other flowers. It just opens. The moment you stop chasing validation, something profound happens. The mind quiets. You stop editing yourself. You start existing as you are. And in that authenticity, peace blooms naturally. One quiet evening, a monk walking through the marketplace was insulted by a merchant. "You monks are useless," the man sneered. The monk bowed gently and continued walking. A bystander asked, "Why didn't you respond?" The monk smiled. "If someone offers you a gift and you do not take it, to whom does it belong?" The monk understood something. Most of us forget. Others' words are only gifts if you accept them. If you don't, they remain theirs to carry. Let that sink in. You don't have to accept every opinion offered to you. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to prove your worth in the court of others' perception. Your peace is too precious to be traded for approval. When you release the need to be understood, you gain the freedom to understand yourself. When you let go of trying to impress, you rediscover what truly moves you. When you stop chasing applause, you begin to hear the quiet applause of your own soul, the one that whispers, "You are enough," even in silence. Practice this each morning before facing the world. Place your hand on your chest and say softly, "Today, I will not beg for permission to exist." Then breathe deeply. Carry that truth like a lantern. Throughout the day, notice how often your thoughts revolve around others' opinions. Will they like this? Do they approve? Each time you notice, smile. Awareness itself is freedom beginning to unfold. You can't drop the habit overnight, but you can loosen its grip breath by breath. Let authenticity become your practice. Speak truth even when your voice shakes. Choose kindness even when it goes unseen. Walk your path even when no one claps. The trees do not bloom for applause, they bloom because it's their nature to do so. And remember, when you stop seeking validation, your energy becomes magnetic, not because you're trying to attract anyone, but because truth shines. People may misunderstand you. That's okay. The Buddha was misunderstood. Peace was never meant to please everyone. It was meant to free you. You do not need to reflect anyone else's light. You are the flame. So burn not to be seen, but to see. Not to be admired, but to illuminate. Not to prove, but to live. When the world asks you to perform, smile, bow, and return to your stillness, because you are no longer a mirror chasing faces. You are the sun shining quietly, fearlessly, endlessly. There is a quiet battle that happens inside each of us, the battle between resistance and reality. It begins the moment we say, "This shouldn't be happening." We may not speak it aloud, but we feel it in our bones, in the tension of the jaw, the clenching of the heart, the heaviness behind every sigh. We fight life as if life were our enemy. Yet the Buddha's wisdom pierces like a bell in the fog. What you resist persists. Resistance feels protective, as if tightening your grip could stop the storm. But in truth, resistance is the storm. It is the friction between what is and what the mind demands. Every time you argue with the present, you divide yourself. You are no longer here. You are trapped in an imaginary version of how things should be. And in that war between is and should, peace cannot breathe. There was once a traveler who came upon a field of bamboo trees bending wildly in the wind. Nearby, a tall oak stood proud and rigid. "See how strong I am," the oak boasted. "I do not bow like these fragile stalks." But when the storm came, the oak snapped and the bamboo only swayed. When the sun returned, the bamboo stood tall again, whispering softly, "Flexibility is not weakness, it is wisdom." So it is with us. When we cling too tightly to how life must unfold, we break under the weight of what is. But when we learn to bend, to let go of resistance, and move with the rhythm of impermanence, we discover a strength that endures. Ask yourself gently, where in my life am I fighting the inevitable? Perhaps it's the end of a chapter you refuse to close. Perhaps it's a mistake you replay endlessly, hoping the past will rewrite itself. Or maybe it's the ache of uncertainty you try to bury beneath control. But no amount of wishing can make the river flow backward. In Buddhist thought, suffering is born not from pain, but from our refusal to meet pain as it is. When you say, "I shouldn't feel this," you double your burden pain, plus resistance to pain. The moment you allow your feelings to exist without judgment, half of the suffering dissolves. Acceptance doesn't mean you approve of everything. It means you stop adding commentary to what already is. There's a story told in monasteries about a young monk who tried to meditate but kept growing angry at his own restlessness. "I can't still my mind," he cried. His teacher smiled and said, "Then be the monk who cannot still his mind. Sit with that." The monk sat, heart-pounding thoughts racing, but this time he did not fight. And slowly, something changed. The thoughts were still there, but the resistance to them wasn't. What remained was peace, not from stillness, but from surrender. That is the paradox of acceptance. The moment you stop resisting what's happening, it begins to lose its power over you. You become like the sky, vast, unmoved, holding even the storm without fear. Try this simple practice when discomfort arises. An emotion, a setback, a thought. Whisper to yourself, "This too. Not this too shall pass. Not this shouldn't be, but simply this too." Let the moment belong. By allowing it, you dissolve the illusion of control and step into the reality of freedom. You might wonder, if I accept everything, won't I become passive? No. Acceptance is not surrendering your strength, it's reclaiming it. When you resist, your energy is spent on fighting reality. When you accept that energy becomes clarity, the power to act wisely rather than react blindly. Imagine standing in the ocean. When a wave approaches, you have two choices: brace against it or flow with it. Resist, and you're knocked down. Move with it, and you rise with the swell. The wave is not your enemy. It is the rhythm of the sea. Life is the same. Resistance says, "This shouldn't be." Wisdom says, "This is, and I can meet it." Sometimes resistance hides behind noble masks. "I just want justice. I just want to fix things." But true wisdom acts from peace, not for peace. You can stand for change without hatred. You can grieve without despair. The Buddha never said life would be painless. He said it could be free of unnecessary suffering. Freedom begins the moment you let go of your inner war. Because the enemy you fight is never outside. It's the part of you that refuses to accept what already is. There was an old woman who lost her son and wept for months. She came to the Buddha and begged for medicine to end her grief. He told her to bring a mustard seed from any home untouched by death. She searched every house, but each family had known loss. Finally, she returned empty-handed and enlightened. "Now I understand," she said softly. "Sorrow is shared by all." Her healing began, not when her pain ended, but when her resistance did. Acceptance is not resignation. It is love without conditions. It is saying, even here, even now, I will not close my heart. When you stop resisting, something miraculous happens. The energy once spent on struggle transforms into understanding. The mind softens, the body relaxes, and you begin to see life clearly, as if through clear water. You realize you were never meant to control the tides, only to learn how to swim. Ask yourself, what if I stopped fighting this moment? What if instead of fixing, I listened? What if instead of controlling, I trusted? In that quiet inquiry, you'll find the doorway out of suffering. Because the truth is, peace doesn't arrive when everything goes your way. It arrives when you stop insisting it must. So breathe, soften, and let life be what it is. You'll find that the world still moves, only now you move with it. And in that flow, suffering begins to fade, replaced by something vast, luminous, and deeply alive: freedom. Everything passes. Every breath, every joy, every sorrow, every heartbeat. Yet how easily we forget this truth, and how much suffering that forgetting brings. We live as if today's emotion will last forever, as if our sadness is eternal, or our fear defines who we are. But the Buddha taught the most liberating truth of all. All things are impermanent. It's not a sentence of loss. It's a song of freedom. Think of your emotions as waves rising and falling in the vast ocean of your being. When you believe the wave is you, you drown. When you remember you are the ocean, you simply watch it move. No storm lasts forever. Even the fiercest tide eventually returns to calm. Once a man came to a wise teacher and said, "My heart is heavy. I feel trapped by pain." The teacher filled a glass with salt and asked him to drink. The man grimaced, "It's too salty." Then the teacher poured the same salt into a lake and said, "Now drink from here." The man sipped and the water tasted fresh. The teacher smiled. The pain is the same. The difference is the space in which you hold it. When you cling to emotion, your heart becomes a glass, small, crowded, bitter. When you rest in awareness, your heart becomes a lake, wide, gentle, forgiving. The salt remains, but the taste changes. You see, emotions are not enemies. They are visitors, messages carried by the wind of impermanence. Anger says, something needs protecting. Sadness whispers, something loved has changed. Fear murmurs, something matters deeply to you. They are not here to stay, only to speak. But we often mistake their presence for permanence. We clutch them, name ourselves by them. I am anxious, I am broken. No, you are not the storm. You are the sky. The Buddha's teaching on anicca impermanence is not meant to make us cold or detached. It is meant to open the heart. Because when you see that everything changes, you learn to cherish, not cling. You hold gently, knowing that the flower's beauty is made more precious by its fragility. You love more deeply because you understand that love too shifts and evolves. Ask yourself, what emotion am I refusing to let move through me? Maybe it's anger you keep replaying, or grief you fear will never end. Notice how you build houses inside temporary weather. You decorate the storm with stories, turning passing clouds into lifelong identities. But feelings are not life sentences, they are seasons. A monk once said, "Let each feeling come as a guest. Prepare tea, listen, and when it rises to leave, bow and open the door. The trouble begins when we lock the guest inside. Try this small practice when a strong emotion visits. Pause and place your hand over your heart. Name it gently. Sadness is here. Fear is here. Anger is here. Do not say I am sad, that makes it personal. Instead, let it be an event passing through awareness. The difference is subtle but profound. I am sad tightens the grip. Sadness is here opens the palm. Impermanence is not just about loss. It is also the quiet promise of renewal. The pain that feels endless today will fade. The heaviness that sits in your chest will lift. Even despair, when seen clearly, becomes a doorway to compassion, because you begin to recognize that all beings everywhere carry their own storms. The rain does not choose where to fall. And yet after every downpour, the earth glows. There's a story from the Buddha's time about a grieving woman named Kisa Gotami. Her child had died, and she wandered the streets begging for medicine to bring him back. The Buddha told her to gather a mustard seed from any home untouched by death. She went to house after house, but each family had known loss. At last, she sat under a tree and wept, not from despair, but from understanding. Death had not singled her out. It had simply reminded her of life's nature. When she returned to the Buddha, she said, I no longer ask for the child's life. Teach me instead how to live. Impermanence doesn't steal peace, it reveals it. Because once you accept that everything changes, you stop clinging and start living. You stop trying to freeze moments and begin to feel them. You stop fearing endings and start trusting beginnings. Look around you. The leaves that fall today feed the soil for tomorrow's growth. The day ends so the night can rest the earth. Even your breath, inhale, exhale, is an endless rhythm of arising and dissolving. Each breath is a lesson in letting go. What if you could treat your emotions the same way? When sadness comes, breathe in softly. This too belongs. When it fades, exhale gently. This too has passed. Life becomes lighter when you stop making the temporary your home. And remember, impermanence applies not only to pain, but to joy as well. The laughter, the beauty, the love, all of it too is passing. But that doesn't make it meaningless. It makes it sacred. The flower that lasts a day is no less beautiful than the mountain that lasts centuries. Both remind us to bow before what is here now. So hold life as you would hold a butterfly, open-handed, tender, knowing that to grip is to destroy. If you can embrace impermanence, you unlock one of the deepest freedoms of all, the freedom to love fully without fear of loss, to feel deeply without drowning, and to let go gracefully when the time comes. Everything changes. That truth, once feared, becomes your greatest ally. For when you truly see that everything passes, the sorrow, the joy, the moment, the self, what remains is a peace beyond change. The Buddha called it the unshakable freedom of the heart. Let the waves rise, let them fall. Watch them with gentle eyes and whisper to each one as it fades. Thank you for passing through, and as the water stills, you will see your reflection once more, not as a fixed image, but as awareness itself, clear, infinite, free. Worry is a patient thief. It doesn't storm the gates of your peace all at once. It slips quietly through the cracks of your thoughts, whispering, "You're not ready. You'll fail. You'll lose." It wraps itself around your heart like ivy, and before you notice, the mind becomes a maze of what-ifs. But here is a truth, both simple and profound: worry does not prevent tomorrow's sorrow. It only steals today's calm. The Buddha once said, "If a problem can be solved, why worry? If it cannot, what is the use of worrying? These words, though ancient, are medicine for our restless age. We mistake worry for care, anxiety for action, fear for foresight. We think by turning a thought over 1,000 times we'll find its solution. But worry is like rocking in a chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't take you anywhere. There was once a farmer whose fields were dying from drought. He prayed, cursed, and worried through many sleepless nights, until one morning, exhausted, he knelt and pressed his hands into the dry soil. "I've done all I can," he whispered, and for the first time, he felt a strange peace. He stopped pacing and began to act, digging a channel from the nearby stream, carrying water one bucket at a time. Within weeks, green shoots appeared. He realized that worry had kept him paralyzed. Only when he surrendered did wisdom guide his hands. Worry disguises itself as responsibility, but it is fear in formal clothing. It exhausts the body while accomplishing nothing. True responsibility arises from clarity, not panic. When the mind is tangled in what if, the heart forgets the what is. Ask yourself, what am I truly doing when I worry? You'll find that worry is often an attempt to control what cannot be controlled. The future is like a river. You can learn to navigate it, but you cannot dam its flow. The present moment, however, is your boat. When you act here now, the current carries you. Buddhist teaching offers a quiet antidote presence. To be here fully intentionally is to step out of the fog. Worry lives in imagination. Action lives in reality. The moment you take one conscious step, no matter how small, you return to your power. Try this practice when worry tightens your chest. Pause and name what is within your control. Write it down if you must. Then act just one small concrete thing. Send the message. Wash the dish. Take the walk. Once you act, worry begins to lose its fuel. What remains is movement, and in movement, there is peace, you might say. But I can't stop worrying. The Buddha would smile gently and answer, then worry mindfully. That means when the mind begins to spin, simply observe. Ah, worry is here. Notice its texture, its temperature, its rhythm. See how it rises, peaks and falls. When you watch worry instead of believing it, you separate the cloud from the sky. Awareness becomes your shelter. Imagine your mind as a house. Worry knocks loudly at first. If you ignore it completely, it pounds harder. If you invite it in, it stays forever. The practice is to open the door, greet it with calm, and say, "You may sit here quietly, but I have work to do." Then return to your life. Eventually, it leaves on its own. The problem isn't that we worry, it's that we believe our worries are truth. But worry is not prophecy. It's memory wearing the mask of the future. It borrows pain from what has already happened and projects it onto what hasn't. When you recognize this, you can bow to worry without bowing under it. Once a young monk confessed to his teacher, "I cannot meditate. My thoughts won't stop." The teacher poured water into a cup until it overflowed and said, "This is your mind when you keep filling it." Then he stopped pouring, and the water settled. Now see, stillness comes when you stop adding. Worry is the same. You don't defeat it by thinking harder, but by ceasing to feed it. When you begin to act even the smallest gesture, the fog lifts. Write the plan. Make the call. Take one mindful breath. These are not insignificant moves. They are the stepping stones out of the maze. A simple truth movement dissolves fear faster than thought. And if you cannot act yet, then breathe. The breath itself is an action. With each inhale you say, "I am here." With each exhale, I release what I cannot hold. Worry cannot coexist with presence. One fades when the other deepens. So let this be your mantra when anxiety arises. Do the next right thing. Not the perfect thing. Not the complete thing. Just the next right step. One that aligns with kindness, honesty, and clarity. Then take another. And another. Soon you realize that worry was never an ocean, just a puddle you mistook for depth. Life unfolds only one moment at a time. Worry tries to live them all at once and burns itself out doing so. Bring your attention back to now, where your hands and breath and feet belong. Remember, the present moment has never betrayed you. It is the mind's wandering that breeds fear, not reality itself. You are not powerless. You are simply unfocused. And the moment you choose action over rumination, you step back into the stream of life. When the mind says, "I must fix everything," smile gently and whisper, "No, just this one thing." Then do it with full attention. Because when you pour your heart into the smallest action, you dissolve the illusion of chaos. Worry shrinks when met with movement. Fear softens when met with presence. Peace grows when met with truth. So today, don't wait for certainty. Begin. Take the step your heart already knows is right. And with each step, you'll find the fog thinning, the sky widening, and the quiet realization dawning. Life was never asking you to worry, only to walk. Imagine yourself standing on the peak of a mountain at dawn. The wind is crisp, the sky painted in colors only silence can describe. Below, the valley is veiled in mist, soft, mysterious, uncertain. From this height, everything looks peaceful. Yet, down there among the clouds, people hurry through their days, each believing their own fog is the whole world. They forget that above the mist, the sun has never stopped shining. This is the nature of the mind. It wraps itself in clouds of thought, fear, judgment, desire, and then forgets that behind those clouds lies clarity itself. The Buddha called this clarity Citta Visuddhi, the purification of the heart-mind. It is not about becoming someone new, but remembering who you already are when the fog of illusion lifts. Your mind at its core is luminous, vast, spacious, untouched by passing emotions. Worry, anger, sadness. They are not the mind itself, only temporary weather moving through it. The path of awakening is not to fight the storm, but to remember you are the sky. There was once a traveler who carried a lantern through the night. When the wind blew and the flame flickered, he panicked and cupped his hands tightly around it. The tighter he held, the less air could reach the flame until it died. Desperate, he sat in the darkness and wept. Then he noticed the full moon above him, shining effortlessly. He laughed through his tears. All this time, he whispered, "I was afraid of losing my light, forgetting the light was everywhere." So it is with us. We spend our days guarding the fragile flame of our image, our plans, our control, forgetting that the real light cannot be extinguished. The more you cling, the more it fades. The more you let go, the more it reveals itself. The Buddha said, "Nothing whatsoever should be clung to." That doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we care without captivity. You can love without possession, act without obsession, live without fear. The heart that holds gently can hold everything. Ask yourself, what am I clutching so tightly that it has begun to hurt? Maybe it's the need for approval, the illusion of certainty, or a dream that has outlived its time. Whatever it is, loosen your grip. Feel how the body softens when you release the demand for control. Freedom doesn't arrive with thunder, it arrives as a sigh. In monasteries, monks are taught to sweep the courtyard every morning. not because the ground stays clean, but because the act itself cleans the mind. Dust always returns, that is life. The task is not to end the dust, but to meet it daily with mindfulness. In the same way, peace is not a one-time achievement. It is a daily sweeping of the heart. Try this practice when you feel overwhelmed. Pause and ask, what is truly here right now? Then respond to that, not to your thoughts about it, not to your fear of it, but to what actually exists. Often you'll find the situation is far simpler than the story around it. A student once asked a Zen master, "How do I reach enlightenment?" The master said, "When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep." The student frowned. "That's too simple." The master smiled. The simple becomes difficult when the mind complicates it. Life's wisdom is found in simplicity. Eat when hungry. Rest when weary. Speak truth when needed. Be silent when not. Each act, when done in awareness, becomes a step toward freedom. And when the mind starts racing again, as it will, don't scold it, smile. Watching the mind wander is itself part of the practice. You are not failing. You are observing movement within stillness. Think of yourself as a musician learning to tune an instrument. The strings, your thoughts, emotions, expectations may sound off-key at first, but with gentle adjustment day by day, you begin to find harmony. The music was always in the instrument. It just needed listening. The harmony of life appears when resistance stops playing louder than awareness. We spend much of our lives reacting instead of responding, pushed by emotion instead of guided by insight. But awareness transforms reaction into reflection. When anger arises, it becomes a teacher. When fear appears, it becomes an invitation. When confusion visits, it becomes a doorway. Every experience, pleasant or painful, is a chance to awaken. This is the heart of Buddhist wisdom. Life itself is the path. Each frustration, each joy, each ordinary breath is your meditation. There is nowhere else to go. You are already walking the way. Let this sink in deeply. You don't need to fix yourself to be at peace. You only need to see yourself clearly. The cracks in your heart aren't flaws. They're openings where light enters. You are not the thoughts that tell you you're not enough. You are the awareness that hears them, the witness behind every rise and fall, the calm eye within the storm. When you rest in that awareness, something miraculous happens. Life begins to reorder itself naturally. The chaos doesn't vanish, but it no longer rules you. The storm still swirls, but the sky within remains vast and clear. So tonight, before you sleep, try this small ritual. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and whisper, "I release this day. I release what I cannot control. I release who I thought I had to be." Then breathe deeply and let the silence embrace you. That silence is not emptiness, it's fullness without demand. You are already whole. You are already home. Let go of the lantern. Trust the moon. And remember, no matter how thick the fog the light within you has, never dimmed, it was only waiting for you to stop searching and simply see. When you wake tomorrow, may your first thought be this: I will meet life as it is, and that will be enough. There is a still place inside you that has never been harmed, not by failure, not by loss, not by the storms of time. You may have forgotten it buried beneath layers of noise and self-doubt, but it has never left. The Buddha called it the original mind, clear as a mirror, before the dust of thought begins to settle on its surface. Every practice, every breath, every act of mindfulness is simply an invitation to wipe the dust away. Most people look for peace in rearranging their circumstances, changing jobs, partners, cities, routines. Yet the same turbulence follows them wherever they go. Why? Because what we call the world is mostly our own reflection. When the mind is agitated, even a sunrise feels heavy. When the mind is calm, even a rainy day feels kind. The landscape of peace is drawn within. Once a woman approached a monk and asked, "How do I stop feeling restless? I've changed everything, my work, my home, even my name, and still, I cannot find peace." The monk poured tea for her, then kept pouring, even after the cup overflowed. "Stop," she cried. The monk looked into her eyes and said, "You keep changing the cup, but you never stop pouring. We keep pouring more plans, more goals, more noise, hoping the overflow will turn into meaning. But peace is not found in adding, it is found in enough. The practice is subtraction, not addition. Sit for a moment and consider, what can I let go of today that no longer serves my heart? It might be a habit of rushing a story of unworthiness, a fear of being misunderstood. Letting go does not mean pushing it away. It means setting it down gently, acknowledging you have stayed long enough. In monasteries, monks often speak of the middle path, the art of balance between indulgence and denial. Too tight and the string snaps, too loose and no music plays. This is true for your own striving. Work, but don't worship work. Love, but don't lose yourself in love. Care, but don't carry what isn't yours. Balance is not stillness without motion. It's motion without madness. There's a simple way to return to this middle path. The breath. Notice it now, not controlling it, just witnessing. Inhale, the world enters. Exhale, you let it go. With every breath, the universe teaches impermanence. You are breathed by life itself. You do not need to command it. Many of us live as if we are separate, me here, the world there. But Buddhist insight reveals something softer, interbeing. Nothing exists in isolation. The tree breathes out the air you breathe in. The rain that falls on one mountain feeds rivers that cross 1,000 valleys. You are not in the world. You are of it. When you understand this, loneliness transforms into belonging. You no longer feel you must fight life. You begin to move with it. A fisherman once pulled up an empty net after hours on the water. He cursed the sea through stones and declared the ocean unfair. A passing monk watched quietly, then said, "Perhaps the fish are not gone. Perhaps they are simply deeper." The fisherman frowned. "And what should I do?" The monk smiled. "Stop thrashing the water. It scares them away." The fisherman stilled his hands, and soon the ripples settled. Moments later, the net grew heavy with life. Peace is like that. It rises naturally when the surface of the mind is calm. The wisdom you seek has been swimming beneath your own agitation all along. Try this before beginning any task, a conversation, a meal, a day's work. Pause for one full breath. In that single moment of awareness, your actions shift from reaction to intention. That pause becomes your sacred gate between confusion and clarity. Remember, enlightenment is not a grand event. It's 1,000 tiny awakenings in ordinary moments, the way you listen, without interrupting, the way you place your phone down to really taste your tea, the way you forgive someone or yourself a little sooner. When you live like this, the present moment stops being a means to an end. It becomes home. Each second becomes complete, nothing missing, nothing extra. Ask yourself, what if I stopped treating this moment as a stepping stone and began treating it as the destination? You'll find that the search for peace ends where presence begins. Even in suffering, this awareness holds you. When pain arises, emotional or physical, the mind wants to escape. but try staying. Breathe into the ache. Watch how it changes. You'll notice something extraordinary. Pain has texture, movement, rhythm. It is not solid. It dances and dissolves under the light of attention. The Buddha called this insight vipassana, clear seeing. Clear seeing reveals that nothing is fixed, not even you. The version of yourself you were yesterday has already passed. The you reading this now will be gone by nightfall. What remains constant is awareness itself, the silent witness that sees without judgment. That witness is your true nature. When you rest in that witnessing, you no longer chase happiness or run from sorrow. You meet each moment as a visitor, bow and let it go. This is what it means to be free in the middle of the world. At night, when you lay your head down, remember everything you touched today. The joys, the fears, the plans were all passing clouds. Let them drift. Beneath them, the vast blue of awareness remains untouched. That is who you are. So rest in that vastness. Let life move through you like wind through bamboo, bending, singing, never breaking. Tomorrow will bring its own winds. You will meet them with the same calm strength. For peace is not found in the absence of storms, but in the unshakable knowing that you are the sky, and every cloud too shall pass. Have you ever noticed how much energy we spend trying to fix what isn't broken? We are constantly trying to become something more successful, more spiritual, more loved, more enough. We chase perfection as if it were a finish line, and when we don't reach it, we turn our disappointment inward. But the Buddha's teaching whispers gently through the noise. You are not here to become perfect. You are here to awaken. Perfection is a mirage. Awakening is water. Perfection says, you are not enough until. Awakening says, you were never less than whole. A sculptor once worked on a block of marble for months, chiseling every edge, polishing every surface. When finished, he looked at his creation flawless, yet he felt strangely empty. A monk passing by asked, "Why are you sad?" The sculptor replied, "I have removed every imperfection." The monk smiled, and in doing so, you removed its soul. We do this to ourselves. We polish and reshape, trimming every flaw until we forget the warmth that made us human. The Buddha did not ask us to erase ourselves, but to see ourselves clearly, both the light and the shadow, and to understand that even imperfection can be a doorway to compassion. Ask yourself, what part of me am I still trying to fix instead of love? Maybe it's your body, your past, your sensitivity, your mistakes. But every scar, every misstep, every bruise has been part of your becoming. To heal doesn't mean to rewrite the story. It means to hold it differently with softness instead of shame. In the Dhammapada, it is said hatred is never appeased by hatred. By love alone is hatred appeased. That includes self-hatred. You cannot hate yourself into wholeness. You can only love yourself awake. This is where real spiritual practice begins, not in escaping humanity, but in embracing it. To awaken is to look at your anger and see the hurt beneath it. To look at your fear and see the longing for safety. To look at your judgment and find the part of you still waiting to be forgiven. There was once a woman who came to a monastery weeping. I've tried to meditate, but every time I close my eyes, my mistakes return. The master poured her a cup of tea and said, "Let them come. Invite them in, but don't serve them dinner." She frowned. "What does that mean?" He smiled. "Welcome your pain, but don't let it unpack its bags. Healing doesn't come from pushing pain away. It comes from giving it a place to rest without letting it rule. Try this when you notice a harsh thought arise. I should be better. I'm not enough. I've failed. Pause and place a hand over your heart. Whisper, "Ah, this is suffering." Not to dramatize it, but to acknowledge it. Then add, "And I choose kindness." This is mindfulness with compassion, the heart of Buddhist practice. We often think of enlightenment as light, radiant, pure, flawless. But light is born only in contrast with shadow. The candle's glow means nothing without the dark. The cracks in your life are not flaws. They are openings where awareness can shine through. When you stop running from what hurts, you begin to understand what heals. And in that understanding, perfection loses its appeal. You no longer want to be untouched, you want to be whole. The world we live in worships images of control, flawless faces, tidy stories, curated lives. But control is brittle. The moment reality touches it, it cracks. Real peace is not about tidying the mess of life, but learning to sit comfortably in it, to see the sacred even in the imperfect. Once the Buddha held up a lotus flower before his disciples and said nothing. Most were confused, but one monk simply smiled. The Buddha said, "This one understands." What did he understand? That truth is not something to be explained, it is to be experienced. The lotus doesn't argue its beauty, it simply blooms from the mud. So let yourself bloom even in your mess. Let the mud nourish you. Every mistake is compost for wisdom. Every heartbreak is ground for growth. Ask yourself, what would it mean if I stopped trying to become and started allowing myself to be? You'll find that most of your suffering isn't from what's happening, but from the war between who you are and who you think you should be. End that war. Lay down your armor. Meet yourself as you are tired, uncertain, beautifully human. The practice of metta loving kindness begins here. Sit quietly and repeat softly, "May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be kind to myself. May I accept myself as I am." Say it not as a wish for some future version of you, but as a blessing for the one reading these words right now. This version, imperfect learning real, is the very place where awakening begins. When you meet yourself with kindness, something shifts. The judgments lose their volume. The striving softens into gratitude. You start to see that peace is not waiting at the end of perfection. It's been walking beside you all along, disguised as imperfection itself. You may stumble, you may fall, you may forget. But even that is sacred, because every fall teaches humility, every forgetting deepens compassion, and every return strengthens faith. The path is not a straight line upward. It's a spiral revisiting the same lessons, but each time with a little more understanding. So breathe, dear soul. You don't need to fix what isn't broken. You only need to remember what was never lost. Let the world chase its illusions of flawless beauty. You simply be the quiet truth that shines through imperfection. Because in the end, awakening is not about polishing the marble. It's about seeing the divinity already carved within the stone. And when you finally stop trying to become perfect, you'll realize you already are enough, because you always have been. There is a point in every seeker's journey when silence becomes louder than words. When the teachings, the prayers, the philosophies, all of them begin to dissolve, and what remains is a quiet seeing. It is not intellectual understanding, but a kind of inner recognition, as if the soul suddenly remembers something it has always known. The Buddha called this sati, mindfulness, pure awareness, untouched by thought. In our modern world, we mistake noise for life. We think if we're not doing, we're not existing. Yet have you ever noticed that the most profound moments are wordless? The gaze of a loved one, the hush before dawn, the feeling of breath moving gently in and out. That stillness, that's where truth lives. There was once a monk who came to his master in distress. "My mind is noisy," he said. "I cannot find peace." The master led him to a lake and told him to sit quietly and look into the water. "What do you see?" asked the master. "Only ripples," replied the monk. "Then wait." Time passed and the surface began to calm. "Now what do you see, my reflection?" The master nodded. "That is your mind. You cannot see truth while stirring the water. Our lives are like that. We keep stirring through worry, regret, and endless motion, and then wonder why peace remains hidden. But peace is not gone. It's simply waiting for the waters of thought to settle. Ask yourself gently, what would happen if I stopped stirring? Try this once a day. Turn everything off your phone, your plans, your noise, and sit in silence for 5 minutes. Not to achieve calm, but to meet what is there. Notice the sounds you usually ignore: your own heartbeat, the breath, the hum of life itself. That's not emptiness, that's presence. In Buddhism, there's a concept called noble silence. It's not about the absence of speech. It's about speaking only what serves truth. When you practice noble silence, you begin to see how much of what we say is just noise filling the space we fear to face. You learn that words lose meaning when they are not born from stillness. The Buddha once remained silent when asked about the nature of the divine. His followers grew restless, but one among them understood the answer was not in the words, but in the silence itself. Because truth, when touched directly, cannot be confined to language. You do not have to be a monk to live this wisdom. Every day offers you small sanctuaries of stillness, a walk beneath the trees, a few slow breaths before speaking the moment between inhale and exhale. These are the doorways to awareness. Awareness doesn't mean escaping life. It means entering it more fully. When you are mindful, you see things as they are, not as your fears or desires paint them. A flower becomes not a symbol of beauty, but beauty itself. A tear becomes not weakness, but release. A breath becomes not routine, but miracle. You begin to understand that nothing is mundane, only unnoticed. A traveler once asked a monk, "What is enlightenment?" The monk replied, "When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep." The traveler frowned. "But everyone does that." The monk smiled. "No, they don't. When they eat, their minds are elsewhere. When they sleep, they dream of tomorrow. I eat and sleep with my whole being." That is the art of presence, doing ordinary things with extraordinary awareness. When you practice this way, time itself changes. Moments stretch and deepen. You no longer rush through the day chasing the next thing. You begin to inhabit the one you're already in. You taste the tea instead of drinking it distractedly. You feel the sun instead of passing beneath it unseen. You become a participant in life, not just a spectator. But mindfulness is not only for peaceful moments, it is also for pain. When sadness arises, awareness says, "Ah, sorrow is here." It doesn't resist or cling, it simply observes. Like watching clouds drift through the sky, you let emotion move through you. The watcher does not drown in the waves, it floats above them. Try this in your moments of difficulty. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is this moment showing me?" Every feeling, every challenge, every silence is a teacher. When you stop labeling experiences as good or bad, they reveal their hidden wisdom. There's a saying in Zen, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." Nothing changes outwardly, yet everything changes inwardly. You still live, love, and lose, but now you do it with awareness. and that awareness turns even suffering into sacred ground. One evening, a monk sat beneath a tree as a storm rolled in. Wind howled, rain poured, and lightning flashed. He didn't move. When asked later if he wasn't afraid, he said, "I was afraid, but I let fear sit with me until it got tired." That is mindfulness, not the absence of emotion, but the courage to stay with it until it loses power. The same can happen within you. Stay, breathe. Let whatever arises come stay and go. Each feeling is a guest. You are the host. Welcome them all, but identify with none. In this awareness, life stops being a series of problems to fix and becomes a sacred flow to witness. You realize that the world doesn't need to slow down for you to be still. You only need to return to the quiet center within the place that has never left peace. When you live from that still point, your actions become softer yet stronger, your words fewer yet truer, your days quieter yet fuller. You no longer chase the light, you become it. So tonight, find a moment of silence, not to escape, but to remember. Sit, breathe, and let the noise settle like dust in sunlight. And in that silence, listen, not to the world, not to your thoughts, but to the still sacred space beneath it all that whispers, "You were never lost. You only forgot how still you already are." There comes a moment in every sincere seeker's path when silence alone is no longer enough, when the heart whispers, "Now live it." The Buddha's wisdom was never meant to remain on a page nor confined to meditation halls. It was meant to walk barefoot through the dust of life, to touch sorrow, joy, and the ordinary alike with awakened hands. Because the true test of awareness is not found in stillness, but in motion. You can sit in the calm of a temple, breathing in perfect rhythm, yet still lose yourself when someone criticizes you, when plans fall apart, when the world refuses to bend to your will. That is where the real practice begins. Enlightenment. The Buddha taught is not escape from life, it is intimacy with it. Once a young monk told his teacher, "I wish I could stay here forever in peace, away from the chaos of the world." The master smiled and said, "If your peace can survive only in silence, it is not peace, it is shelter. Peace that depends on conditions is fragile. True peace moves through conditions untouched. The lotus does not bloom because the water is clean. It blooms because it knows how to remain pure in the mud." Ask yourself gently, what happens to my peace when the world does not go my way? Do I hold it like a candle in the wind, guarding it fearfully? Or do I let it burn brighter, trusting its own flame? The essence of practice is integration, to carry the stillness of meditation into conversation, into traffic, into heartbreak. The Buddha never asked us to retreat forever into caves. He walked among farmers, kings, thieves, and children, teaching through presence, not perfection. His serenity was not delicate. It was a live, resilient human. You can do the same. Each moment in daily life offers a new chance to practice. When someone speaks harshly, can you listen without defending? When plans collapse, can you breathe instead of blame? When joy arises, can you savor it fully, knowing it too will pass? Every interaction is a mirror. What you see in others reflects what still stirs within you. Anger, judgment, impatience. They are teachers in disguise, showing you where your peace still trembles. There was once a monk who visited a village to teach. A man shouted insults at him from the crowd. The monk remained calm. "Don't you hear me?" the man yelled. The monk smiled. "I hear you." "Then why don't you get angry?" the man demanded. The monk replied, If someone offers you a gift and you refuse it, to whom does it belong? The man fell silent. Peace is not indifference. It is mastery over reactivity. It is knowing when to bow instead of battle. The moment you no longer need to prove your truth, you begin to embody it. Stillness is easy when the room is quiet. The art lies in keeping your center when the room shakes. Try this practice throughout your day. Ask yourself, where are my feet? It's a small question, but profound. Wherever your feet are, that's where your life is. Feel them on the ground when you speak, when you walk, when you listen. This simple act brings you back from the swirl of thoughts into the stability of being. Mindfulness is not about slowing life down. It's about being fully alive within it. You can wash dishes with the same awareness as a monk in meditation. You can listen to a child's laughter with the same reverence as a temple bell. Every act, when done with presence, becomes sacred. Once a lay disciple asked the Buddha, "How should one practice when surrounded by worldly noise?" The Buddha replied, "Be the still point in the turning world. When others burn with anger, be the cool shade. When others grasp, be the open hand." That is the heart of the practice, to embody peace so deeply that it begins to calm those around you. You don't need to preach Buddhism for others to feel its wisdom. Your gentleness will teach more loudly than your words ever could. Remember, awareness is not withdrawal. It's deeper participation. It's not stepping back from life, but stepping into it fully without losing yourself in the current. Every emotion, every encounter, every challenge becomes an invitation. Can you stay awake here too? When you feel joy, be present enough to feel gratitude. When pain arrives, be patient enough to let it pass. And when the mundane fills your day chores, traffic waiting, see those moments as training grounds for enlightenment. The small moments shape the great awakening. The Buddha said, "Do not seek to follow in my footsteps. Seek what I sought." He didn't want disciples, he wanted awakeners. So live mindfully, not to appear wise, but to become real. Speak softly, not to sound spiritual, but to preserve peace. Help others not to feel virtuous, but because compassion is your nature. Each breath can be a prayer, each step a pilgrimage, each smile a blessing. You are not asked to renounce the world, only your resistance to it. Let life unfold as it does while you walk with a heart steady as a mountain and gentle as rain. And when storms come, because they will, do not curse them. The storm does not destroy the mountain. It reveals its strength. That strength already lives in you, beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the story of who you think you must be. There is a stillness that cannot be shaken. Return to it, again and again, in traffic, in conversation, in solitude. Because the true awakening is not found in escaping the world, but in realizing at last that you and the world were never separate. There is a quiet illusion that many of us carry, the belief that peace will come after success, after forgiveness, after things make sense. We live suspended between the past and the future, like a tightrope walker afraid to fall, clinging to what was and reaching for what's next. Yet in that tension, the present, the only real home of life, slips silently away. The Buddha said, "Do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." These are not poetic words. They are a key to freedom from the endless pendulum of regret and worry. The mind is a restless traveler. It wanders backward, replaying old wounds, or forward, rehearsing imagined fears. But awareness is the still witness that never moves. When you rest in that witness, you return home. Imagine a boat tied to two opposite shores, the past and the future. No matter how hard you row, the ropes hold you back. Only when you cut both lines does the boat drift freely into the current of now. Ask yourself softly, where is my mind right now? Is it replaying something I cannot change, or worrying about something that hasn't happened? Bring it back, not with force, but with gentleness to this moment, this breath, this sound, this heartbeat. The present is simple, but the mind loves complexity. It says, this can't be it. And so, it invents stories to chase. But this ordinary breathing moment is the gate of awakening. The Zen masters call it suchness, the isness of reality unadorned and sacred. Once a student asked a monk, what is the secret of peace? The monk held up a cup of tea and said, drink your tea. The student laughed, thinking it a joke, but the monk's eyes were still. He wasn't pointing to tea, he was pointing to presence. The act of drinking fully mindfully was the whole teaching. We are always waiting for life to begin, but life is not waiting. It is happening breath by breath. When you realize this, the smallest things become holy. The steam rising from your cup, the rhythm of your footsteps, the hum of the wind all whisper the same truth. Now is enough. Try this practice as you move through your day. Pause 3 times and ask, what is here right now? Not what should be, not what might be, but what is. Feel your body, listen to the sounds around you. Notice the light. That's not trivial. That's awakening in motion. Presence is the end of struggle because struggle lives only in time and before and after. In this exact moment, if you look closely, there is no problem. There is breath. There is awareness. The rest is thought. Buddhism calls this insight anicca, impermanence. Everything you cling to will change, everything you fear will pass. The mind resists this truth because it wants ground, but the heart understands impermanence is not tragedy. It is life's mercy. Because things change, wounds heal. Because things pass, pain softens. Because all things end, love becomes precious. A monk once said, you can never step in the same river twice, but you can learn to flow as it does. To flow is to live without fighting the current. The river doesn't cling to rocks or try to hold the water behind it. It moves forward by releasing what it cannot keep. Let that be your practice. Release what is already gone and trust what is arriving. When memories surface, bow to them like old teachers. They came to shape you, not to shackle you. When worry appears, smile at it gently. It only arises because the mind forgets it cannot predict tomorrow's tide. Bring it back to now, where the next breath is already waiting, faithful and free. Presence does not mean ignoring responsibility or denying emotion. It means meeting them without story. You can grieve and still be present. You can feel anger and still be aware. Presence doesn't erase feeling. It holds it tenderly without adding the chains of why me or what if. There is a tale of a monk sweeping the temple courtyard. A passerby mocked him, saying, "Why sweep? The dust will return tomorrow." The monk smiled, "Yes, and I will sweep again." That is mindfulness, not fixing the world once and for all, but meeting each moment with care. Every morning you wake is a new courtyard. Sweep it with presence. Don't carry yesterday's dust into today's dawn. Ask yourself, what would my life feel like if I stopped postponing peace? Not "I'll be calm when," but "I am calm now." The difference is everything, because peace is not an achievement. It is your natural state beneath the noise. The mind's chatter is like waves on the ocean. The depth below has always been still. When you begin to rest in that depth, time itself feels different. You no longer rush. You no longer resist. You begin to inhabit life instead of chasing it. There's a Zen proverb. The miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the earth. Each step taken in awareness is a miracle. Each moment lived fully is enlightenment expressed. So stop waiting for the perfect moment. It will never arrive because every moment seen clearly already is perfect in its imperfection. You don't have to climb mountains to find peace. You only need to stand still long enough to feel the ground beneath your feet and whisper, "I am here." And in that quiet recognition, the search ends. Because what you were seeking was never lost, only overlooked. Peace is not in some distant future. Peace is this breath, this heartbeat, this now. There is a soft truth hidden in every sorrow you've carried, a truth most hearts overlook because they are too busy running from pain. Yet the Buddha's wisdom tells us, in this very body, in this very life, lies the path to liberation, meaning even your suffering can become a sacred doorway if you have the courage to walk through it mindfully. Pain itself is not the enemy. It is the resistance to pain that multiplies it. Suffering begins the moment we say, "This should not be happening." But the universe doesn't move according to our preferences. It moves according to cause and effect karma, the web of interdependence where everything arises and fades in its time. When we meet pain with presence, something astonishing happens. The story around it begins to dissolve, and what remains is raw aliveness, intense, vivid, honest. This is not misery. This is truth, stripped of illusion. There's a story told in monasteries about a monk who broke his leg while traveling. As he lay on the ground in pain, another monk asked, "Are you suffering?" The injured monk smiled faintly and said, "Pain is here, but suffering is optional." The other monk looked puzzled. "How can you say that?" The injured one replied, "The pain belongs to the body. The story that this shouldn't have happened belongs to the mind." That small shift from identification to observation is liberation. You are not the ache. You are the awareness that notices the ache. Close your eyes for a moment and bring to mind something that hurts. Maybe a memory, a disappointment, a loss. Notice where you feel it in the body, the throat, the chest, the stomach. Instead of turning away, lean in. Breathe into that place as if you were breathing into a wound with compassion, not judgment. Ask softly, "What is this pain trying to teach me?" If you listen closely, you may hear whispers beneath the hurt. Slow down. Let go, forgive. See how deeply you care. Pain, when honored, becomes a teacher of tenderness. Buddhism calls this dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness of existence, the truth that nothing, not even joy, remains untouched by change. It's not a pessimistic teaching. It's a mirror reflecting reality. When we stop expecting permanence, life becomes lighter. We suffer not because things end, but because we expected them not to. Once you understand this, your heart softens. You stop asking, "Why me?" and begin asking, "Why not me?" You realize that suffering is not punishment, but participation, the shared experience of being human. Every tear you shed joins the great ocean of collective compassion. In one story, the Buddha was asked, "What is the greatest quality of an awakened being?" He replied, "A heart vast enough to hold all things." That is your practice, not to avoid pain, but to expand your heart until even pain fits within it. Try this meditation. When you feel overwhelmed, close your eyes and visualize your heart as a vast sky. Let your emotion be a single cloud within it. Watch it drift. No cloud, no matter how dark, can stain the sky. It only passes through. Pain passes through you the same way. The sky does not push the cloud away. It simply allows it. Allow your pain the same kindness. There is a profound peace that blooms when you stop running. You begin to see beauty even in your brokenness. The Japanese call this kintsugi, the art of mending cracked pottery with gold, making it more beautiful than before. In the same way, awareness fills your cracks with understanding. You do not become less because you've been broken. You become more real, more radiant. The Buddha taught that compassion begins when you recognize your own suffering mirrored in others. When you see a stranger's tears and whisper inwardly, "Ah, I know that pain," the wall between me and you dissolves. Your empathy becomes boundless. That is the birth of karuna, compassion without condition. The world does not need your perfection. It needs your tenderness. When you meet your own suffering with kindness, you become a refuge for others. You begin to walk differently, not as one untouched by pain, but as one who has befriended it. People feel peace around you, not because your life is flawless, but because your presence says, "It's okay to be human here." Ask yourself, what if I stopped trying to avoid pain and started learning from it? You might find that every heartbreak was training your heart to love more deeply. Every loss was showing you the value of now. Every fear was calling you home to trust. There is no wasted suffering when it's met with awareness. And remember, even pain is impermanent. What burns today will cool. What feels endless will pass. The storm never stays. It moves on when you stop chasing or fighting it. Sit quietly tonight and whisper, "I allow this moment to be exactly as it is." Then breathe and feel how even your pain begins to loosen its grip. You are not here to live a life free of difficulty. You are here to discover the freedom that exists within difficulty. When you can sit beside your own sorrow with compassion instead of judgment, you become like the moon, serene, shining, reflected even on dark waters. So when the next wave of pain rises, do not brace yourself, open yourself. Let it wash through you, teach you, and leave you clearer than before. Because in the end, pain does not destroy those who meet it with awareness. It purifies them. It makes them vast. And in that vastness, you will find what all seekers eventually find, not the end of pain, but the end of resistance. That the Buddha said is liberation. There is a kind of freedom that doesn't announce itself with celebration or noise, a quiet, steady freedom that comes from understanding the nature of fear. Most people spend their lives trying to overcome fear, to conquer it, to silence it. But the Buddha's wisdom tells another story. Fear is not your enemy. It is a teacher pointing toward attachment. Every fear hides a what if. What if I lose? What if they leave? What if I fail? Every what if hides a deeper truth, a place where the heart still clings. To meet fear wisely is not to destroy it, but to walk hand in hand with it until it shows you what you're holding too tightly. Once a monk, meditating in a forest, was haunted by visions of wild beasts. Terrified, he ran to his master. "Master, the forest is full of danger. I cannot meditate there." The master replied calmly, "The danger you flee is the danger you carry." The monk bowed his head, returned to the forest, and sat again. When fear rose, he did not run. He simply whispered, "I see you." With each breath, the beasts grew smaller, until one morning they disappeared. This is the power of mindfulness, to bring awareness into fear's dark cave, until light fills it. Fear cannot survive the warmth of full attention. Ask yourself, What does my fear look like when I stop running from it? Does it have a shape, a color, a voice? When you turn toward it with compassion, you'll often find it is not a monster, but a child, trembling, seeking safety. It softens not through battle, but through love. In Buddhist teaching, fear arises from attachment, the craving for things to be a certain way. We fear loss because we cling to gain. We fear failure because we cling to identity. We fear death because we cling to the idea of I. When we see through these illusions, fear begins to lose its teeth. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the more it escapes. But when you open your palm, the sand rests easily in your hand. So too with life, hold it lightly, and fear no longer rules you. There's a story of a traveler who came to a raging river. The current was too strong to cross, so he built a raft from branches, tied it together, and used it to reach the other side. When he arrived safely, he thought, "This raft has saved me. I should carry it wherever I go." But as he walked through the forest, the raft became a burden. The Buddha told this story and said, "So it is with fear. It serves you once, but not forever. When it has carried you through the storm, put it down. Ask softly, what fear am I still carrying that has already served its purpose?" Sometimes we cling to fear because it feels familiar. We mistake vigilance for safety, anxiety for preparation. Yet fear doesn't protect you. It paralyzes you. It whispers lies about your strength. But the truth is, courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to move with fear in your heart and still keep walking. Try this practice when you feel fear rising. Pause and name it. Fear is here. Don't add, "I am afraid." Let it stand alone as an event in consciousness. Then breathe slowly, deeply. Feel your feet on the ground. Return to the body, because fear lives in imagination, but the body lives in reality. You'll notice something remarkable. Fear changes when you watch it. Its sharpness dulls. Its weight lightens. It begins to feel less like a wall and more like a wave. And all waves pass when met with stillness. Buddhism teaches that fear is one of the last illusions before awakening. As long as you identify with a self that can be lost, fear will remain. But when you glimpse your true nature, awareness itself, fear dissolves like mist before the sun. The sky cannot fear the clouds. Once a student asked his master, "How do I conquer fear?" The master replied, "Walk into it." The student said, "But what if I fall?" The master smiled, "Then you will learn you can stand." Every great realization is born from walking through fear, not around it. You may think courage feels like confidence, but often it feels like trembling. The point is not to stop trembling, but to tremble consciously, without running, without retreating. Fear says, "I am not ready." Awareness replies, "You already are." Look at nature. The seed cracks before the sprout appears. The caterpillar dissolves before the wings emerge. Everything that transforms must pass through a moment of uncertainty. So when fear visits, bow to it. It means growth is near. Try whispering this mantra to yourself when fear arises. I am safe in this moment. This too is part of my path. I do not need to control what I can meet with awareness. Soon you will find fear becoming not an obstacle, but a signal showing you where to bring your light. The Buddha once said, "You are the sky. Everything else is just weather." Fear is only passing weather. It may thunder, it may rain, but it cannot stain the sky. And the more you recognize this, the freer you become. Because in truth, fear does not vanish by fighting it. It fades when you stop mistaking it for truth. Let it come. Let it speak. Let it pass. And when it does, you will stand where countless beings before you have stood in that vast open field of awareness where nothing is to be feared because nothing can be lost. That the Buddha called fearlessness not because the world became safer, but because you finally realized you were never separate from it. Somewhere deep within every human being lies a quiet longing, not for wealth, not for fame, not even for happiness, but for home. A home not made of walls or memories, but of peace. Yet we spend our lives searching for it in every direction, but inward. We move from person to person, city to city, dream to dream, hoping the next one will bring rest. But the Buddha said, "You will not find peace by rearranging the world. You will find it only by understanding yourself." The true home is awareness, that space within you untouched by circumstance. You carry it wherever you go, yet you forget, and build houses of illusion around it. You think, "When I have this, I will finally rest." But even when you have it, the longing returns, because peace cannot be possessed. It can only be remembered. Once a young monk asked his master, "Where should I go to find enlightenment?" The master replied, "Nowhere." The monk was confused. "But I feel lost." The master smiled. "Then stay lost until you see. There is no way to be lost from yourself. We are not lost in the world. We are lost in our thoughts about it. Like a man searching for his own glasses while wearing them, we seek outside what has always been within. Ask yourself gently, what am I still chasing that I already have? You already have enough to sit in peace, breath, body awareness. But the mind says, not yet. The mind is a wanderer, always seeking the next mountain, the next moment, the next validation. Yet each time it reaches the peak, it discovers only another horizon. The awakened ones stop climbing. They sit down and see that the mountain was never outside, it was within. Try this practice when restlessness arises, the feeling that you must do change or achieve something. Pause and ask, what am I avoiding in this stillness? Often it's not boredom you fear, but intimacy with yourself. Silence reveals everything we hide behind activity. In the quiet, you begin to see the mind's constant grasping, and beneath that, a simple wordless truth: you are already whole. Once you touch this wholeness, you stop demanding that life complete you. People, success, love, they no longer need to fill your emptiness, because the emptiness was never real. It was only a shadow cast by forgetfulness. In Buddhism, this remembering is called satipanya, mindful wisdom. It is the seeing that brings you home, not by adding anything, but by removing the layers of misunderstanding. A laywoman once asked the Buddha, "What is the meaning of home?" The Buddha said, "A mind at peace is the truest home." That peace does not mean the absence of challenge. It means that whatever comes, joy or sorrow, gain or loss, you have a place within that remains undisturbed. Like the eye of a hurricane, still and vast, even while winds howl around it. To live from that place is to carry your temple wherever you go. You may walk through noise, through chaos, through heartbreak, but your inner altar stays lit. Ask yourself now, where is my altar? What do I worship with my attention? Because whatever you attend to, you strengthen. If you attend to fear, it grows. If you attend to anger, it deepens. But if you attend to peace, even in a single breath, peace answers. Try this meditation tonight. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and imagine a small flame at the center of your heart. With each breath, see it glowing brighter, steadier. It is not affected by thought, sound, or memory. It simply burns, soft, unwavering. Whisper to yourself, "This is home." The great teacher Ajahn Chah once said, "If you let go a little, you'll have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you'll have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you'll be free." The art of coming home is the art of letting go of control of judgment of the idea that life must unfold according to your design. Life is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a river to be floated. The more you struggle to control its current, the more you tire. But when you let go, the river carries you effortlessly. A traveler once crossed a desert and complained to a monk he met along the way. "The path is long, the sun is merciless, and I am exhausted." The monk replied, "Then put down what you are carrying." "But I'm carrying nothing," said the traveler. The monk smiled, "Only your thoughts." So much of our exhaustion comes not from life itself, but from the stories we tell about it. I can't. I must. I should. It's too late. These thoughts weigh more than any physical burden. Lay them down. The ground beneath your feet will feel lighter instantly. Coming home is not about retreating from the world. It's about walking through it without losing yourself. It's about remembering again and again. This breath is my refuge. This moment is my teacher. This awareness is my home. No matter where you go, you can always return, not to a place, but to a presence. Home is not in the past or the future. It is not in another person or a perfect plan. Home is the stillness that watches all things come and go, yet remains. And when you finally rest in that stillness, you will realize something profound. You were never homeless. You only forgot where you lived. So breathe deeply. Set down what you're carrying and whisper to your own heart, softly, lovingly, "I am home." There are moments in life when silence alone cannot carry the weight of what we feel, when words tremble on the edge of the heart, yet none seem enough. In those moments, the Buddha invites us to listen, not to the noise of our thoughts, but to the space between them. Because often, peace is not found by adding more answers, but by resting in the mystery itself. We spend so much of our time demanding certainty. We want to know what comes next, why things happened, what it all means. The mind fears uncertainty because it cannot control it. But what if uncertainty is not chaos, but creation still unfolding? What if the unknown is not a void, but a womb where new possibilities are born? Once a disciple asked the Buddha, "Why must life be so unpredictable?" The Buddha smiled gently and said, "Because if everything were certain, there would be no room for wisdom. It is through not knowing that we learn to trust. It is through darkness that we begin to see." Imagine a seed buried deep in the soil. It cannot see the light, it cannot predict when it will break through. But still, it grows. Not because it knows, but because it trusts the process. Your life is like that. Every ending, every loss, every unknown moment is fertile ground for awakening, if you let it be. Ask yourself, where in my life am I still resisting the unknown? Maybe it's in love, in work, in change in yourself. Notice how the mind tries to build walls against uncertainty, plans, expectations, predictions, but life always finds a crack to enter through. That crack is grace. The Buddha taught that craving for certainty is one of the roots of suffering. We cling to answers, identities, outcomes, as if they could save us, but everything we cling to eventually shifts, fades, transforms. When we release the demand for guarantees, life becomes fluid again. There is a parable of two monks watching a flag fluttering in the wind. One said, "The flag is moving." The other said, "No, the wind is moving." Their teacher, hearing this, said, Neither the flag nor the wind moves. It is your mind that moves. Uncertainty is not in the world. It is in the mind that refuses to rest. Try this practice when you find yourself caught in anxiety about the future. Pause and say softly, "This too is the path." Then breathe into the unknown as though it were a friend. Feel how even fear begins to lose its shape when met with acceptance. Acceptance does not mean resignation. It means bowing to the present moment as it is without insisting it should already be different. It means letting life unfold at its own pace. The Buddha often compared awareness to an open hand. A closed hand grasps, controls, and tires quickly, but an open hand can hold release and receive again with ease. Practice keeping your heart like that, open, trusting. There was once a farmer who prayed daily for rain. When it finally came, he prayed for it to stop. A monk passing by said, "You pray for what you want, instead of listening to what you need." The farmer frowned. "And what do I need?" The monk smiled. "To trust that the sky knows when to rain and when to clear. Life rains and clears according to its own rhythm. The heart's task is not to predict it, but to dance with it. Ask yourself, can I live this day without demanding it to be different? Because the truth is, peace isn't found when things go your way. It's found when you no longer require them to. In Buddhism, this freedom is called upekkha, equanimity. It is the steady heart that remains balanced amid gain and loss, praise and blame, joy and sorrow. Equanimity doesn't numb you, it deepens you. It lets you feel fully without drowning, to care deeply without clinging. Try this reflection. When joy comes, say, "Welcome." When pain comes, say, "Welcome." When uncertainty comes, say, "Welcome." Each guest has something to teach. The poet Rumi once wrote, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival." The Buddha would agree. Let them all come, fear, doubt, joy, grief, and host them with awareness. They are not intruders. They are reminders that you are alive. The mind seeks safety and knowledge, but the soul grows in mystery. The more you trust what cannot be seen, the more life reveals itself through you. One evening, a disciple asked his master, "When will I be free from doubt?" The master replied, "When you no longer need to be." Freedom doesn't come when all questions are answered, but when you make peace with the unanswered ones. Look at the night sky. Stars shimmer not because they eliminate darkness, but because they coexist with it. Your wisdom grows the same way, not by erasing uncertainty, but by shining quietly within it. Let that be your prayer tonight. May I rest in the mystery. May I trust what I cannot yet see. May I walk gently with uncertainty until it becomes my teacher. Because in truth, the unknown is not against you. It is working for you, shaping the person you are becoming. And one day, when you look back, you will see that what you once called confusion was actually the path itself carrying you home all along. There is a subtle kind of suffering that most people carry without even realizing it, the quiet ache of comparison. It creeps into our minds unnoticed, whispering that someone else is happier, more successful, more loved, more enlightened. And in that whisper, peace begins to slip away. The Buddha taught that jealousy and comparison arise from moha delusion, the forgetting of our true nature. We believe we are separate, incomplete, needing to measure our worth against others. Yet in the light of wisdom, this belief dissolves. How can the ocean compare one wave to another? Each rises, each falls, each reflects the same sun. Once a monk was walking through a village and saw two trees standing side by side, one tall and lush, the other smaller and twisted. The villagers praised the taller one and pitied the other. The monk smiled and said, "They are both perfect. The tall one teaches the sky how to stretch. The small one teaches the earth how to bend." Comparison blinds us to the sacred uniqueness of every form. It turns life into a race that no one can win because the finish line keeps moving. Ask yourself softly, whose life am I measuring mine against? When you look closer, you'll see the absurdity of it. No two beings share the same karma, the same path, the same lessons. The flower does not compete with the moon. It simply blooms. In Buddhist thought, this comparison arises from ignorance from not seeing clearly. The truth is, everything you admire in another already lives within you in seed form. When you feel envy, don't shrink from it. Look deeper. It's your own potential calling to be remembered. Try this reflection when you notice jealousy. Pause and whisper, "May they be happy." Turn the poison into medicine through compassion. The more you celebrate others' light, the brighter yours becomes. A student once complained to his teacher, "I feel small when I see others succeed." The teacher handed him a glass of salt water and asked, "How does it taste?" "Bitter," said the student. The teacher then poured the same salt into a vast lake and said, "Now drink." The student tasted and said, "It's fresh." The teacher smiled. The amount of salt hasn't changed. What changed is your container. When your heart is small, every slight and comparison feels bitter. When your heart expands, nothing can disturb your peace. Practice expanding your heart until the world's judgments dissolve like salt in a lake. This expansion happens through gratitude. Gratitude breaks the spell of comparison. It shifts your focus from what's missing to what's already here. When you wake each morning, instead of scrolling through others' lives, close your eyes and whisper 3 simple truths. I am alive. I am breathing. This moment is enough. The Buddha said, "Contentment is the greatest wealth." It means resting in sufficiency, not in stagnation, but in wholeness. You can still grow, still dream, still strive, but from fullness, not lack. There was once a farmer who complained that his harvest was smaller than his neighbor's. A passing monk asked, "Have you ever thanked the earth for what it already gave you?" The farmer frowned. "Why would I thank it for so little?" The monk smiled, because gratitude turns so little into enough. Contentment is not complacency. It is peace with reality. It doesn't mean you stop walking, but that you stop running from yourself. Ask yourself, when was the last time I sat quietly and felt grateful without reason? In that silence, the world reveals its abundance. The simple things, a breath of air, a sip of water, the warmth of sunlight, become extraordinary again. Jealousy is the mind's hunger. Gratitude is the soul's nourishment. If you practice seeing the beauty in what you have, comparison begins to fade. You stop trying to be someone else's reflection and start shining in your own light. There's a Zen story of 2 monks watching a sunrise. One said, "It's more beautiful yesterday." The other replied, "Then you weren't truly looking today." Every day holds its own kind of beauty, but you must be present to see it. The flower you ignore while chasing a garden blooms for you anyway. The present moment is constantly offering gifts. You only need to open your hands. Comparison closes the hands. Gratitude opens them. Try this each evening before you sleep. List 3 small moments that brought peace, not success, not recognition, but simple peace. The sound of rain, a shared smile, a deep breath. Let that be your offering to the day. The Buddha called this mudita, sympathetic joy, the ability to rejoice in the happiness of others. To practice mudita, is to transform the heart from competition into celebration. When another's light shines, you no longer feel diminished. You feel illuminated, because in truth, there is no other. Every joy you witness adds to the radiance of the whole. You and I and all beings are threads in the same luminous fabric. When one thread glows, the entire tapestry brightens. So the next time comparison arises, smile at it. It is only a reminder that you've forgotten your own worth. And then breathe, return to gratitude, and whisper to yourself, I am not behind. I am not ahead. I am right where life needs me to be. That is contentment, not as an idea, but as a way of being. And from that peace, you begin to see the world not as a contest to win, but as a shared awakening, where every being in their own way is returning home to the same truth. In every heart, there is a quiet yearning to be understood, not praised, not admired, simply seen, to be met without judgment, without condition. Yet most of our suffering comes from seeking that understanding in others before finding it in ourselves. We beg the world to validate what we have not yet learned to accept within. The Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." Yet somehow, this is the hardest truth to believe. We find it easier to offer compassion to a friend, a stranger, even a passing animal, than to the person living in our own chest. Why is that? Because self-compassion requires honesty, the courage to look at your own heart without flinching, to see your flaws, your regrets, your fears, and still whisper, "I forgive you." Once a young monk came to his master in tears. "Master, I have failed again. My mind is restless. My anger returns. My vows feel empty." The master looked at him with kindness and said, "When a child learns to walk, do you scold them each time they fall?" The monk shook his head. "Then why do you scold yourself for learning how to live?" The Buddha's path is not a path of perfection. It is a path of understanding. Every stumble is part of awakening. Every shadow you meet is a place where light longs to enter. Ask yourself, when did I last offer kindness to myself without reason? Not because you earned it, not because you succeeded, but simply because you are human, breathing, trying. The mind often resists this softness. It says, if I am kind to myself, I will become weak or lazy. But compassion is not indulgence. It is strength wrapped in gentleness. It is the quiet voice that says, I can start again. Try this practice. Place a hand on your heart and whisper softly, "May I be gentle with myself today." Feel the warmth of your own touch. That warmth is not coming from outside. It is your own love returning home. There is a saying in Zen, when you realize how perfect you are, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky. But perfect here does not mean flawless. It means whole. Even your cracks belong. They are part of the design. A potter once dropped a newly shaped bowl. The apprentice gasped, thinking it ruined. The potter smiled, picked it up, and said, "Now it will hold light in places it couldn't before." You too have been cracked open by life. Each break was not the end, but an opening, a doorway through which wisdom could enter. In Buddhism, this compassion for oneself is called metta, or loving kindness. It is not sentimental. It is revolutionary. Because when you stop waging war against yourself, you stop projecting war onto others. The way you speak to yourself becomes the way you speak to the world. Look closely at the tone of your inner voice. Would you speak that way to someone you love? If not, begin again. Make your mind a kinder place to live. Once you learn to treat yourself with compassion, forgiveness begins to blossom naturally. The Buddha said, Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. The same is true for self-anger. You cannot punish yourself into peace. Forgiveness is not about erasing the past. It is about freeing yourself from its weight. It begins with understanding. Understanding that you acted as you could with the awareness you had then. If you had known better, you would have done better. That understanding is not an excuse. It's an awakening. Try this reflection, close your eyes, and imagine your younger self standing before you, the one who made mistakes, who hurt others, who carried shame. Look into their eyes and say, I understand. I forgive you. You are learning just as I am. If tears come, let them. They are not weakness, they are release. The Buddha taught that anatta, the doctrine of non-self, means we are not fixed beings. Who you were yesterday is not who you are now. Every moment, you are being rewritten by awareness. So why carry guilt for a self that no longer exists? When you forgive yourself, you create space for compassion to flow outward. You stop needing to prove your worth because you finally remember it. And when you see yourself clearly, you see others clearly. You realize everyone is doing their best within their level of understanding. Compassion then becomes effortless, not an act of will, but of recognition. There was once a monk who was insulted by a traveler. Instead of reacting, the monk bowed and said, "Thank you, friend. You remind me I still have work to do." That is what forgiveness feels like, not forgetting, not condoning, but seeing the mirror clearly and smiling. Ask yourself, what am I still holding against myself that I could lay down now? The moment you release it, you'll feel something remarkable, not emptiness, but lightness. To forgive yourself is to finally rest, to finally come home. Try this final meditation. Sit quietly and repeat, "May I forgive myself for the ways I did not yet know how to love. May I release what no longer serves peace. May I remember that I am enough just as I am." Feel the breath enter and leave your body. It asks nothing of you. It gives without condition. Let that be your model for love. And one day, when you look back, you'll realize that the person you've been trying to become was simply the person you've been waiting to embrace all along. You are not broken. You are becoming whole. And that the Buddha said is the beginning of true compassion. Some say the greatest form of love is to give. Others say it is to understand. But the Buddha taught something deeper: to love without self. To love so purely that there is no longer I who loves, and you who are loved, but only love flowing freely like a river that nourishes all it touches without asking who is worthy. The world often mistakes attachment for love. We hold tight, we cling, we call it devotion. But attachment says, "I love you because I need you." True love says, "I love you because I see you, and in seeing you, I see myself." Once a monk asked the Buddha master, "What is the difference between attachment and love?" The Buddha held a rose in his hand and said, "If you hold it too tightly, it will wither and lose its beauty. If you let it rest in your palm gently, it will share its fragrance with you." That is the art of loving with mindfulness, to care deeply, without gripping, to give freely, without expecting return. Ask yourself, who or what am I holding too tightly? Maybe it's a person, a memory, an idea of how life should be. When you release the grip, love doesn't vanish, it becomes purer. In Buddhist teaching, this love is called metta or metta, loving kindness without condition. It begins not with another, but with yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup, nor can you offer peace you do not feel within. So we practice loving-kindness meditation, not to send light outward only, but to awaken the well of compassion already flowing inside. Try this practice, close your eyes, and breathe gently. On the inhale, think, "May I be peaceful." On the exhale, "May all beings be peaceful." Feel that circle of compassion expanding from your heart to your room, to your city, to every corner of the world. This is not imagination. It is energy in motion, the vibration of awareness, remembering itself in all forms. The Buddha once said, "Just as a mother protects her only child, even at the risk of her own life, so should one cultivate boundless love toward all beings." Such love is not sentimental. It does not depend on agreement, on closeness, or even on like. It is love born from wisdom, from seeing that every being, even the one who harms, suffers from ignorance. Understanding this, hatred melts like ice beneath the sun of awareness. There was once a monk meditating on compassion when a man insulted him. Instead of reacting, the monk said, "May you be happy." The man grew angrier and shouted louder. The monk repeated, "May you be happy." Finally, the man spat and stormed away. The monk's disciple asked, "Why did you keep blessing him?" The monk replied, "Because his suffering was shouting through him. My compassion must shout louder." To love in this way is not weakness, it is the highest strength. It is to stand in the midst of anger, deceit, or cruelty and still choose peace. It is to remember that every being you meet, no matter how unkind, is fighting a battle you cannot see. Ask yourself, can I love even where it hurts? Not by excusing harm, but by refusing to add to the world's bitterness. When you love like that, your heart becomes vast, big enough to hold both joy and sorrow without breaking. The Buddha's disciple Ananda once asked, "Is friendship half of the holy life?" The Buddha smiled. "No, Ananda, it is the whole of it. True friendship is not about agreement. It is about presence. To walk beside another being without trying to fix or change them, simply to accompany them through their path, is an act of great compassion. And this too applies to yourself. Be your own friend. Sit beside your pain as you would sit beside a friend's. Speak to yourself the way you would to someone you love dearly. When you can offer that friendship inward, the walls between self and other begin to dissolve. Try this reflection. The next time someone annoys or hurts you, pause and think, just like me, they seek happiness. Just like me, they struggle. Just like me, they wish to be free. Feel what changes inside you when you see them not as an enemy, but as a mirror. When you look deeply enough, you realize there are no separate hearts, only one great heart beating through all of existence. To love is to recognize that heartbeat in every form. Even the tree swaying in the wind, even the bird flying overhead, even the stranger you'll never meet, all share the same pulse of life. When you walk in awareness of that truth, every step becomes a blessing. The Buddha called this boundless compassion Brahma Vihara, the divine dwelling. To abide in love, compassion, joy, and equanimity is to live in heaven even while on earth. Heaven is not elsewhere. It is a state of mind wide enough to include everything. There's a story of a monk who was asked, "How can you love everyone equally?" He replied, "Because when I close my eyes, I see no one outside the circle of my breath." That is enlightenment, when the boundaries of me and you blur and only love remains. So tonight, sit quietly and whisper, "May I be at peace. May you be at peace. May all beings be at peace." Let these words ripple through the world, like gentle waves meeting distant shores. For love that asks nothing in return changes everything it touches. It doesn't need to shout to prove to control. It simply is. And when you learn to love this way freely, silently, fearlessly, you'll realize that love was never something to find. It was what you've been all along. Some truths can only be understood through loss, not the loss that shatters the heart into despair, but the kind that strips away illusion until what's left is real. The Buddha's path begins there, not in gaining something new, but in letting go of what never truly belonged. Everything in this world passes through your hands like sand. The more tightly you grasp, the more it escapes. But when you open your palms, you begin to feel the gentle texture of impermanence, not as tragedy, but as tenderness. To love what changes is to love life itself. There's an old story about a monk who carried a cup of water carefully across a field. When asked why he was so cautious, he said, "Because I know this cup will one day fall and shatter. So while I hold it with full awareness." That is the art of mindful living, to know that everything you touch is temporary and therefore infinitely precious. Ask yourself, what am I still trying to make permanent in a world built on change? Maybe it's a relationship, a moment, an image of yourself. Whatever it is, notice how clinging to it tightens your chest, narrows your breath. Letting go isn't giving up, it's giving space. It's allowing life to move through you, rather than trying to contain it. In the Buddha's teachings, impermanence anicca is not meant to sadden us. It's meant to awaken gratitude. When you realize nothing lasts, you begin to cherish everything more deeply. The fleeting sunset becomes a miracle. The fading laughter of a friend becomes a blessing. Even the tears become holy, for they too will pass. A traveler once complained to a monk, "Why does everything I love slip away?" The monk handed him a flower and said, "Because life is a river, not a cage. If you tried to trap this flower, it would wither. But if you leave it on the branch, it will share its fragrance until it's time to fall." We suffer because we forget that falling is part of blooming. Try this reflection each morning when you wake. Whisper to yourself, "Everything I see today will change." Don't say it with sorrow, but with appreciation. Then move through your day as if every encounter were your last, because one day it will be. That awareness turns ordinary moments into sacred ones. When you understand impermanence, you stop taking life so personally. You see that people don't always stay, feelings don't always last, and plans don't always unfold. But none of that means life is cruel. It simply means life is alive, always moving, always becoming. In Zen, there's a teaching called shunyata, emptiness. It doesn't mean nothing exists. It means nothing exists independently. Everything you love is part of a vast, interconnected dance of arising and fading. Even your breath, it enters it, leaves it, returns. When you resist that rhythm, you suffer. When you flow with it, you are free. The Buddha once picked up a handful of leaves and said to his disciples, "The number of things I know are as vast as the forest, but what I teach you are these few leaves because they lead to peace." Among those leaves was this truth: all things change. Cling to nothing. Clinging creates fear, fear of loss, fear of endings. But the end is not the enemy. The end is the doorway through which new life enters. Think of autumn. The trees do not mourn the falling leaves. They let go with grace, knowing spring will come again. In the same way, when something leaves your life, a person, a dream, a version of yourself, bow to it. thank it for its time. Then open your hands for what comes next. Ask yourself, what am I ready to release with gratitude? Maybe it's an old resentment, a story that no longer serves, a part of your identity built on fear. When you release it, you create space for something truer to grow. Try this practice. Write down one thing you're ready to let go of. Read it aloud. Then with a deep breath say, I release you. You don't need to destroy the paper. Just fold it gently and place it under a stone or bury it beneath a tree. Let nature complete the act of surrender. Letting go is an act of trust. It says to life, I no longer need to control how it unfolds. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering, but he also taught that love can exist without attachment. To love without clinging is to love like the sun shining freely, expecting nothing in return. When you let go, you don't lose, you align. Life begins to move with you instead of against you. You stop chasing permanence and start dancing with impermanence. And then you see, even endings are not real endings. Every sunset carries the promise of dawn. Every death gives birth to new life. Every goodbye contains the echo of another meeting somewhere, somehow. In the great rhythm of existence, nothing is ever truly lost. Everything only changes form. So tonight, before you sleep, place your hand on your heart and whisper, I release what is leaving. I bless what is coming. And I rest in the space between where peace lives. Because in the end, the secret of letting go is simple. You were never holding anything to begin with. There is a gentle power that lives in stillness, not the stillness of absence, but the stillness of full presence. The world mistakes stillness for inactivity, yet the Buddha taught that true stillness is the highest form of energy, for it is the birthplace of wisdom. In our modern lives, everything moves at the speed of thought. We scroll, rush, react, our days become a blur, our hearts a battlefield of noise. We confuse motion with meaning, yet beneath all that movement lies something untouched, a silent awareness watching it all unfold. The purpose of meditation, the Buddha said, is not to escape life, but to return to it, to touch that silence again and realize it was never gone. There once was a monk who watched a mountain stream. The water tumbled over rocks, noisy and restless. But beneath the surface, he saw deeper currents flowing smoothly, silently. He whispered, "This is the mind." The noise above was thought, the stillness below awareness. Ask yourself, when was the last time I truly stopped? Not to rest, not to wait, but to be. Stillness is not something to create. It's something to remember. You are already still beneath the surface waves of your thoughts. Meditation is simply the act of sinking back into that quiet depth. Try this sit for 5 minutes. Close your eyes. Don't try to silence your mind, that would only add more noise. Instead, listen. Listen to the hum of your own aliveness, your breath, your heartbeat, the soft rustle of your thoughts passing by. You'll begin to see something remarkable. Your thoughts are not enemies. They're just clouds passing through a vast sky. And you are the sky itself. The Buddha called this insight citta bhavana, cultivation of the heart-mind. When you rest in awareness, the mind becomes clear like a lake reflecting the moon. You begin to respond to life instead of reacting to it. In the same way, a storm does not disturb the depths of the ocean, it only stirs the surface. Likewise, the challenges of life cannot shake the stillness that lies beneath your awareness unless you mistake the waves for the water. Stillness is not withdrawal. It is the most profound engagement with reality. It is the space where you begin to see, instead of just look to hear, instead of just listen to feel, without clinging. A disciple once asked his teacher, "How can I find enlightenment?" The teacher said, "Stop looking for it." The disciple frowned. "Then what should I do?" The teacher smiled. "Be still, and it will find you." Enlightenment is not a place to reach. It's a clarity that arises when the mind stops chasing. Ask yourself, what if I stopped striving for a moment? What if I allowed life to meet me instead of constantly reaching for it? When you rest in stillness, awareness begins to expand. You start noticing the subtle, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the weight of your breath, the quiet kindness behind a stranger's eyes. The ordinary becomes luminous. In Zen, there is a saying, "Sitting quietly doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself." This is the way of the awakened mind. It doesn't force, it allows. It doesn't rush, it trusts. Stillness teaches patience. It reminds us that everything ripens in its own time. The flower does not bloom by effort, it blooms by presence. Likewise, your wisdom grows not by pushing, but by allowing. Try this reflection during your next difficult moment: an argument, a disappointment, a delay. Instead of reacting, pause and take one conscious breath. Just one. That breath is your doorway back to the stillness beneath the storm. Stillness is not about the absence of sound. It's about the absence of conflict. You can sit in a crowded street and still be at peace if your heart is quiet. The Buddha said, "If a man conquers himself, no demon in the world can harm him." That conquest happens not through struggle, but through awareness. The courage to sit in silence with yourself until even your fears grow tired of shouting. In that silence, something beautiful unfolds. You begin to see the play of life, the laughter, the sorrow, the impermanence, and you no longer cling. You participate without being possessed. You love without losing yourself. You move without being moved from your center. Once a monk asked the Buddha, "What is peace?" The Buddha replied, "Peace is when nothing disturbs the mind." The monk asked, "And how do I reach that?" The Buddha said, "Stop letting what changes disturb what does not." That is the heart of stillness, knowing the difference between what moves and what remains. Everything around you, the seasons, emotions, bodies, ideas, are rivers flowing. You are the mountain they flow around. The mountain does not resist the rain or chase the wind. It simply stands. Let yourself be that mountain, unmoved, grounded, present. Tonight, before you sleep, sit for a moment in silence. Don't think, don't analyze. Just breathe and feel the space between each thought. That space is you, vast, timeless, unchanging. And if tomorrow brings noise again, remember, you don't need to escape the world to find peace. You only need to return to the stillness that has been quietly waiting within you all along. For when you learn to rest in that stillness, even chaos becomes sacred. There is a pain deeper than loss, subtler than anger. It is the quiet ache of unfulfilled expectation. The Buddha called it tanha, craving, the endless wanting that ties the heart to suffering, not because desire itself is evil, but because it blinds us to the beauty of what already is. Everywhere we look, we see the same story. When I get this, I'll be happy. When I become that, I'll finally rest. But each time the mind grasps what it wants, the satisfaction fades, and a new desire rises. It is a thirst without end. A man once came to the Buddha, troubled and weary. "Master," he said, "I suffer because I never get what I want. The Buddha looked at him gently and asked, "Have you ever considered that the problem is not what you don't have, but that you keep believing? Happiness depends on having it. Desire itself is not the enemy. The problem lies in our attachment, our belief that fulfillment lies outside of ourselves." The Buddha didn't teach us to kill desire, but to understand it, to see its roots clearly until it releases us on its own. Ask yourself, what is it I'm truly chasing? Not the object, not the title, not the approval, but the feeling beneath it. Maybe what you really want is peace, belonging, freedom, or love. The mistake is believing that those qualities exist somewhere outside you. When we chase happiness as a possession, we remain beggars. When we recognize it as our nature, we become kings. There's an old story of a fisherman who sat quietly by the river each morning. A businessman once approached him and said, "Why don't you fish more? You could sell your catch, buy more nets, and grow rich." The fisherman smiled. "Then what?" The businessman replied, "Then you can rest." The fisherman laughed. "But that's what I'm doing now. Desire makes us run in circles chasing what we already have." The Buddha likened it to a dog chasing its own tail. The faster it runs, the dizzier it gets. Try this reflection when desire arises. Pause and whisper, "May I see this clearly?" Don't suppress it. Don't indulge it. Simply watch. Desire thrives on blindness. It dissolves in awareness. Soon you begin to notice that every desire contains both promise and pain. The promise says, "This will complete you." The pain whispers, "You are not enough until you have it." Seeing this illusion clearly is liberation. In Buddhist thought, tanha has three forms: craving for pleasure, craving for becoming, and craving for non-becoming. The first makes us chase comfort. The second makes us chase identity. And the third makes us chase escape. Together, they weave the net of dissatisfaction that keeps the mind restless. Freedom comes when you no longer need life to be different before you can be at peace. A monk once asked his teacher, "How do I end craving?" The teacher said, "Don't end it. Understand it so deeply that it ends itself." Understanding transforms craving into compassion for yourself, for others, for the shared human condition of wanting. We are all thirsty travelers in the desert of desire, each looking for a well that has always been within. Ask yourself, can I allow myself to feel the wanting without needing to satisfy it? That simple act turns desire into a meditation. The raw energy of craving becomes fuel for awareness. In that still seeing, something miraculous happens. The energy that once chased outward begins to flow inward. It becomes creativity, kindness, wisdom. The fire of desire, when understood, becomes the light of consciousness. The Buddha taught that desire is like fire: uncontrolled, it burns; understood, it illuminates. The key is to know what you're feeding. Try this practice when you feel a craving for attention, for achievement, for escape. Take one slow breath. Feel the sensation in your body. Don't fight it. Just ask, what am I truly longing for? Then listen, not with the mind, but with the heart. The heart will often answer softly, to rest, to belong, to be seen. When you realize that the root of all desire is the desire to return home to yourself, the search ends. One day, a student told the Buddha, "I seek happiness." The Buddha replied, "Remove I, that's ego. Remove seek, that's desire. What remains is happiness." Happiness is not something to be achieved. It is what's left when the mind stops chasing. The modern world thrives on your craving. Every advertisement whispers, "You are incomplete." Every comparison tells you you are behind. But remember, the Buddha awakened not by gaining anything, but by releasing everything that was false. So instead of asking, "How can I get more?" begin asking, "What can I release?" Release the need to prove. Release the pressure to become. Release the illusion that joy must be earned. When you stop demanding that life fill your every hunger, life begins to feed you in quiet, miraculous ways. Like a still pond reflecting the moon, peace arrives when nothing more is stirred. You may still dream, still create, still love, but your joy will no longer depend on the outcome. You will act not from lack, but from wholeness. And that is the freedom the Buddha spoke of, to live fully without being enslaved by wanting. Tonight, before you sleep, close your eyes and place a hand on your heart. Whisper gently, "May I want less and love more. May I chase nothing but the truth. May I remember that peace was never missing, only forgotten. Because when craving ceases, peace doesn't begin. It simply reveals itself like the moon emerging from behind the clouds that were never real to begin with." There are moments when life feels like a constant test, one wave after another, one loss after the next. You try to stay strong, but sometimes strength itself becomes another form of resistance. The Buddha taught that true strength is not the armor we wear to endure life, but the openness we cultivate to feel it fully. We live in a world that glorifies endurance. Be tough, be unshakable. Don't let them see you fall. But in the language of awakening, falling is not failure. It is how the heart learns humility. It is how compassion grows. The flower does not curse the rain for bending it. It bends, then rises again. There once was a monk who asked his teacher, "Master, how do I become as unbreakable as you?" The teacher smiled, picked up a reed from the river and said, "Be like this. When the storm comes, it bends. And because it bends, it survives." That is the strength of the awakened heart, flexible, tender, yet rooted. Ask yourself, have I mistaken hardness for strength? Because real power isn't the refusal to feel pain, it's the courage to feel it without being destroyed. Pain, when resisted, becomes suffering, but when embraced with awareness, it becomes wisdom. The Buddha said, "Pain is certain, suffering is optional." The pain of loss, rejection, or change will visit all beings. But the suffering, the story that says, "This shouldn't be happening to me," is the chain we place upon ourselves. Try this reflection. When pain arises, don't push it away. Place your hand over your heart and say softly, "This too belongs." Feel what happens when you stop fighting your own experience. Acceptance doesn't mean approval. It means allowing life to move through you instead of getting stuck inside you. Once a woman who had lost her child came to the Buddha weeping. "Please, Master," she begged, "bring my child back." The Buddha said gently, "Find me a single house in this village where no one has lost someone they loved, and I will help you." The woman went door to door, but every family had their own story of loss. When she returned, tears still on her face, she said, "I understand now. I am not alone." The Buddha smiled. And because you understand this, your healing has begun. Suffering isolates us when we believe it is only ours. Compassion begins when we see it is shared by all. Your pain, your loneliness, your grief, none of it separates you from others. It connects you. Every being you meet carries invisible wounds. To suffer consciously is to become gentle with yourself, with others, with the fragile beauty of existence. Ask yourself, what if my pain is not punishment but passage? Because pain, when held in awareness, becomes the teacher that softens the ego and opens the heart. Try this practice when you feel overwhelmed. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. With each inhale, whisper, "I open to this." With each exhale, I release resistance. Don't rush the feeling. Let it unfold at its own pace. Every emotion, no matter how heavy, carries a seed of awakening within it. In Buddhism, this gentle acceptance is called karuna, compassion, born from wisdom. It's not pity, it's presence. It's the willingness to walk with pain without needing to fix it. A monk once said, "Do not run from your wounds, for they are where the light enters." That is the essence of healing, not erasing the wound, but allowing it to become a window. Look at nature. When a tree's bark is scarred, sap gathers to seal the wound. Over time, that scar becomes the tree's most resilient part. So too with us, our scars are not signs of weakness, but proof of life's persistence within us. Ask yourself, what is life trying to teach me through this pain? Sometimes the lesson is patience, sometimes humility, sometimes it's simply to remind you that everything passes, even this. The Buddha's first noble truth was that life contains suffering, but his final realization was that beyond suffering lies liberation, not because pain disappears, but because our relationship to it transforms. When you stop asking, "Why me?" and begin asking, "What is this showing me?" your suffering becomes sacred. Try this visualization. Imagine your pain as a dark stone held in your hands. Instead of throwing it away, imagine placing it in a clear stream. Watch as the water flows over it, softening its edges, smoothing its roughness. That stream is awareness. The stone is your pain. With time, awareness polishes even the hardest experiences into wisdom, and one day you will look at the same pain and realize it no longer hurts the same way. It has become part of your strength. The Buddha said, "Just as a lotus blooms from the mud, the heart blooms from suffering." The mud is not a mistake, it is the source. So do not curse the storms that have shaped you. They did not break you, they revealed your depth. Tonight, when you feel tired of holding on, remember this. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to cry. You are allowed to begin again. Breathe, whisper softly, "I trust the wisdom of this moment." Even in pain, I am learning to love more deeply. Even in darkness, the seed of light is growing within me. For the awakened heart is not the one that avoids suffering, but the one that uses suffering as the doorway to boundless compassion. And when you walk through that doorway, you discover nothing was ever against you. It was all preparing you to see. There is a strange paradox at the heart of awakening. The more deeply you understand life, the softer you become. Not weaker, not indifferent, but gentler, kinder, more spacious inside. For wisdom is not about knowing more, it is about resisting less. The Buddha said, "Just as rain falls equally on all things, the trees, the stones, the flowers, so should the heart of compassion embrace all beings without distinction." And yet most of us divide the world in two, those we love and those we cannot forgive. But the awakened mind sees beyond that. It recognizes that both kindness and cruelty arise from the same ignorance. The same pain that makes one person hurt becomes the compassion that makes another heal. When you look deeply enough, even those who harm are simply lost, bound by delusion. You don't have to condone their actions, but you can free your own heart by releasing hatred. Once a disciple asked the Buddha Master, "How should I treat someone who has betrayed me?" The Buddha replied, "Like a torch fallen into mud, pick it up, clean it, and let it shine again. Do not let the mud make you afraid of light." Forgiveness, then, is not about forgetting the wound. It's about remembering your own light. Ask yourself, whom have I allowed to live rent-free inside my heart? Every grudge, every resentment, every bitterness, it's like carrying hot coals in your bare hands. You think you're hurting the other, but it's your own peace that burns. To forgive is to drop the coal, to finally unclench the fist and open the hand to peace. But forgiveness begins not with others, it begins with yourself. Because until you forgive yourself, you'll keep projecting your inner war onto the world. The Buddha said, "If your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete." Try this practice. Bring to mind someone who has hurt you. Feel the tension that arises, the tightness, the heat, the story. Now take a breath and whisper, "May I release you. May I be free. May we both find peace." You may not mean it fully yet. That's okay. Forgiveness is not a single act. It's a practice, a slow softening of the heart. Each time you repeat it, the grip loosens a little more. In time, you begin to see that forgiveness is not a gift to the other, but a liberation of the self. It's you saying, "I will no longer let pain define my boundaries." The Buddha told a story of a man struck by an arrow. Would you rather remove the arrow, he asked his disciples, or spend your life wondering who shot it and why? That is how resentment works. It keeps the arrow inside while you chase the story. Freedom begins the moment you stop asking why and start healing what is. Ask yourself, am I ready to remove the arrow? Healing begins when you no longer need to be right, when peace becomes more valuable than pride. Once a monk was insulted in the marketplace. Instead of reacting, he bowed and walked away. A follower asked, "How can you remain silent when people treat you unjustly?" The monk replied, "If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does it belong? That is wisdom, to see that others' cruelty belongs to them, not to you. You are not obligated to carry their poison in your veins." Try this reflection. When anger arises, do not suppress it. Instead, sit quietly and feel its raw energy. Beneath anger is often pain, a wound saying, "See me, hear me." Touch that wound with awareness, and the anger transforms into understanding. In Buddhism, this transformation is called kshanti, patience, or forbearance. It is not passive endurance, but the strength to stay open amid difficulty. To practice kshanti is to understand that time itself heals. Just as muddy water clears when left undisturbed, the heart clears when given stillness. Ask yourself, can I allow time to do its gentle work? Not every wrong must be righted immediately. Some knots untie only through quiet patience. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It means seeing clearly that holding on serves nothing. It means choosing freedom over fixation. The Buddha once told his monks, "Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal law." And love in its highest form is not emotion, but understanding. It sees the suffering behind every unkind act, the confusion behind every wound. When you look at the world with this kind of vision, enemies dissolve. They were never enemies, only teachers in disguise, mirrors, showing you where your heart was still closed. Try whispering this mantra when resentment arises. May I not add more pain to pain. May I meet this moment with wisdom. May I be free from the burden of hatred. Over time, you'll feel something extraordinary. The energy once trapped in resentment returns as peace. Your breath deepens, your mind clears, and you begin to see that forgiveness was never about them. It was about reclaiming your own serenity. A great teacher once said, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water, but now with a lighter heart." That is the fruit of forgiveness, not a perfect life, but a lighter one. Because when you forgive, you don't erase the past, you free the present. You stop being defined by what hurt you and start being guided by what heals you. Tonight, before you rest, close your eyes and imagine placing every resentment you still hold into a bowl of clear water. Watch the anger dissolve like salt. Feel the relief of release. Whisper, "I forgive because I love peace more than pain. I let go because I choose freedom over control. May all beings, even those who've hurt me, find awakening and rest." And in that moment, you will feel it, the quiet, weightless grace that comes when the heart finally stops fighting life and begins to love it again. That the Buddha said is the beginning of true peace. If you listen carefully enough, you will notice that all of life moves according to a silent rhythm, a sacred pulse that breathes through every tree, every wave, every being. The Buddha called this the law of interdependence, or pratityasamutpada, the truth that nothing exists alone. Every joy, every sorrow, every moment is born from countless causes and conditions. We like to imagine ourselves as separate, this I and you, this mine and theirs. But separation is an illusion, a trick of the unawakened mind. When one being suffers, the whole web trembles. When one heart heals, the whole world breathes easier. Once the Buddha picked up a single leaf and said, "In this leaf lives the sun, the rain, the earth, and the hand that plucked it." Nothing exists independently. So too with us. The food we eat, the air we breathe, even our thoughts, all are the result of 1,000 invisible kindnesses. To live with awareness of this is to live in gratitude, not as a practice, but as a natural way of being. Ask yourself, how often do I remember my interconnection with all things? When you drink water, do you thank the cloud? When you walk on earth, do you feel the life pulsing beneath your feet? Modern life teaches us to say, "I did this." But in truth, nothing is ever done alone. Every achievement is a chorus of teachers, strangers, ancestors, sunlight, and time. Gratitude opens your eyes to this vast cooperation that sustains your every breath. Try this reflection as you eat your next meal. Pause before taking the first bite. See the rice, the grain, the fruit. Imagine the hands that sowed the seeds, the rain that fell the sun, that ripened the soil that nourished. Then whisper, "May all who made this possible be blessed." In that moment, eating becomes meditation, a sacred act of remembrance. When you live in awareness of interbeing, compassion arises naturally, because you see that no one's pain is separate from your own. You stop judging so quickly. You stop condemning so easily. The boundaries of us and them begin to dissolve. The Buddha said, "As a mother would protect her child with her life, so should one cultivate a boundless heart toward all beings." This boundless heart, metta-citta, is the awakened response to understanding interdependence. It is not selective compassion. It embraces both the kind and the cruel, the near and the distant, because in the light of truth, there is no other. Once a monk asked the Buddha master, "What is the measure of enlightenment?" The Buddha replied, "When the boundaries of your compassion extend beyond what you can see, ask yourself, how far does my compassion reach? Does it stop at my family, my nation, my beliefs? Or can it stretch wide enough to hold the whole world?" When compassion matures, even those who harm you are seen through the eyes of understanding. You realize they too are caught in ignorance, and that ignorance is suffering. Hatred can no longer take root in a mind that has seen this truth. Try this simple meditation. Close your eyes and visualize your breath flowing outward like light. With each exhale, imagine it touching the people around you, your family, your neighbors, even those you dislike. Whisper silently, "May you be safe. May you be peaceful. May you be free." This practice, repeated daily, begins to reshape your heart. What once felt narrow becomes vast. What once felt heavy becomes light. Interconnection is not a concept. It is the very fabric of existence. When you act kindly toward another, you are not helping them. You are healing yourself. When you harm another, you are wounding your own consciousness. The wave that crashes against another wave cannot avoid moving the same ocean. A disciple once asked his master, "How can I know if my practice is working?" The master replied, "When the happiness of others feels as important as your own." In that state, compassion ceases to be effort. It becomes instinct, the natural movement of a heart that has remembered its oneness with all life. Look at the forest. Each tree draws sunlight for itself, yet its roots intertwine with the others, sharing nutrients unseen. None compete. All coexist. That is wisdom in nature's language. Humanity has only to remember what the trees have never forgotten. Ask yourself, can I live today as if every being's joy were my own? What would change if you saw every encounter, even the difficult ones, as a sacred meeting of the same consciousness, wearing different faces? The Buddha once said, "He who sees interdependence sees the Dharma." To see interdependence is to awaken. It's to realize that the pain you cause, the love you give, the peace you cultivate, all ripple endlessly through the web of being. Try this contemplation before sleep. Recall one kind act you performed today, even something small. A smile, a word of patience, a moment of restraint. Then whisper, "May its ripple reach far beyond what I can see." Even the smallest kindness is like a pebble dropped into still water. Its waves reach shores you will never walk. And so the awakened one walks, gently speaks softly, lives mindfully, not out of fear, but out of reverence. For they see that every gesture touches the whole. You do not need to change the world to heal it. You only need to remember that you are it. When you drink, the earth drinks with you. When you smile, the universe smiles back. When you awaken, all beings take one step closer to awakening. This is the great truth. We rise and fall together, like waves in one infinite sea. And when you finally feel this truth in your bones, not as philosophy but as presence, you will know that compassion is not something you do. It is what you are. There comes a moment, often quiet and unexpected, when all the teachings, all the searching, all the trying fall away, and only stillness remains. Not the stillness of emptiness, but of completion. The Buddha called it nibbana, the extinguishing of the fires that once consumed the heart. It is not a place, not a heaven, not an escape. It is the realization that nothing was ever missing, that peace was here all along, waiting patiently beneath the noise of your becoming. To awaken is not to become someone new. It is to stop pretending you are anything less than whole. The path that began in suffering ends in clarity, not because pain disappears, but because the one who suffered no longer exists in the same way. What remains is awareness, luminous, boundless, and free. Once a disciple asked the Buddha master, "What happens to the self after enlightenment?" The Buddha smiled and said, "When a flame goes out, where does it go?" The disciple stayed silent. The Buddha continued, So it is with the self. It does not vanish, it dissolves into what has always been. We spend our lives saying, I am this, I am that, chasing identities, like waves chasing the shore. But when the tide of understanding rises, those identities return to the ocean of being from which they came. Ask yourself, who am I without my story, without my fears, my name, my past? Sit quietly with that question. You will begin to feel it, the spaciousness that opens when you stop trying to define yourself. That is the taste of liberation. Enlightenment is not a thunderclap. It's a gradual dawn. The mind softens, the heart expands, and suddenly the same world that once felt heavy now glows with quiet wonder. You see the divine in the ordinary, the perfection in imperfection, the eternity in every fleeting breath. You stop seeking signs of meaning and begin living as meaning itself. In that seeing, compassion flows effortlessly. You no longer love because you should. You love because you are love. A master once told his student, "Before enlightenment, I was a beggar asking life for peace. After enlightenment, I became the bowl." The awakened one no longer searches for completion because they see that everything joy and sorrow, gain and loss, birth and death are simply movements of the same infinite dance. You begin to understand that awakening is not the end of the path, but the beginning of true living. To be awake is to move through the world with eyes unclouded, heart unarmored, and spirit unafraid. The Buddha once said, "There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path." And so the journey that began with the question, "How do I find peace?" ends with a smile, because you realize you were never truly lost. Try this final meditation. Sit in silence. Breathe deeply. With each inhale, feel life entering not as your breath, but as the breath shared by all beings. With each exhale, feel yourself dissolve into that vastness, boundaries fading, self softening. Whisper softly, "I am the sky watching the clouds of thought pass. I am the ocean in which all waves rise and fall. I am awareness itself, infinite, still, and free." In that recognition, you understand what the Buddha meant when he said, "Within this very body is the world's arising and the world's ceasing. Everything you sought was never elsewhere, it was always here within. The journey through fear, desire, loss, and longing was not wasted. Each step was necessary. Each struggle was grace in disguise. You had to break to become open, to lose, to see clearly, to suffer, to awaken compassion. Now as the path comes full circle, you see that awakening was never a destination. It was the home you carried within you, all along the still point where nothing needs to be added, nothing needs to be removed. Life continues. The waves still rise and fall, but now you stand in their midst untouched. The noise of the world still hums, but the silence within sings louder. You eat, you walk, you laugh, you weep, but everything happens in a sacred stillness. The ordinary has become divine. You bow to life, and life bows back. For the first time, you understand what it means to be truly free, not because you control anything, but because nothing controls you anymore. You have walked the path from illusion to truth, from attachment to surrender, from fear to love. And now, standing in the light of awareness, you can finally rest, not as a seeker, not as a struggler, but as being itself, vast, awake, at peace. Let this be your final reflection. Everything changes, yet nothing is lost. Everything passes, yet nothing is gone. For behind the dance of impermanence shines what the Buddha called the unborn, the unconditioned, the deathless. That is what you are. So close your eyes, smile softly, and let your final whisper be, I have arrived. I am home. I am free.